The Cabala. By Bernhard Pick. Foreword. Although the Cabala belongs to the past, it nevertheless demands our attention on account of the interest taken in it by men like Raymond Lully, the Doctor Illuminatus, as he was styled, died 1315. John Picus de Mirandola, 1463–1494. John Reuchlin, 1455–1522, Cornelius Henry Agrippa von Nettesheim, 14861535, John Baptist von Helmont, 1577–1644, the English scholars Robert Flood, 1574–1637, and Henry More, 1614–1687. How much Theophrastus Paracelsus, 1493–1541, and Jacob Boehme, 1575–1624, called Philosophus Teutonicus, were influenced by Kabbalistic doctrines, is difficult to state. At any rate, the names mentioned before are sufficient to call attention to a theosophical system which has engaged the minds of Jewish and Christian scholars. It is surprising how scanty the English literature is on the Cabala. True that in the History of the Jews by Basnage, London, 1708, we have a lengthy account of this theosophy, pages 184256, but this account is originally given in the French work Histoire des Juifs, by the same author. John Gill, died 1771, in his Dissertatio de Genuina Punctorum Vocalium Hebraicum Antiquitate, Contra Capellam, Waltonham, etc. Prefixed to his Clavis Pentateuchi, Edinburgh, 1770, refers to the Zohar to prove the antiquity of the Hebrew vowel points, because it states that the vowel points proceeded from the Holy Spirit who indited the sacred scriptures, etc. On Song of Songs 57b, edition Amsterdam, 1701. Of course, so long as the Cabala was believed to be a genuine revelation from God, and Simon ben Jokai, of the 2nd century, was believed to be the author of the Zohar, to whom God communicated all the mysteries. It was but a matter of course to believe in the antiquity and divinity of the vowel points. John Allen, died 1839, in his Modern Judaism, London, 1816, 2d. Edition 1830, also gives an account of the Cabala, in which he premises the antiquity of the Zohar, which he makes the primary source of the primitive Cabala. Passing over Dean Milman's, died 1868, History of the Jews, London, 1829, often reprinted, in which we naturally also find references to the Cabala, we mention J. W. Etheridge, died 1866, author of Jerusalem and Tiberias. Sora and Cordova, a survey of the religious and scholastic learning of the Jews, designed as an introduction to Hebrew literature, London, 1856. This author seems to have been acquainted with the researches of the Jewish scholars in Germany, but he nevertheless stoutly adheres to the traditional view. Thus he remarks on page 314. To the authenticity of the Zohar, as a work of the early Kabbalistic school, objections have indeed been made, but they are not of sufficient gravity to merit an extended investigation. The opinion that ascribes it as a pseudo-fabrication to Moses de Leon in the 13th century, has, I imagine, but few believers among the learned in this subject in our own day. The references to Shimon ben Yochai and the Cabala in the Talmud, and abundant internal evidence found in the book itself, exhibit the strongest probability, not that Shimon himself was the author of it, but that it is the fruit and result of his personal instructions, and of the studies of his immediate disciples. We may say that Etheridge's view is mutatis mutandis also that of Ad. Frank, author of Système de la Kabbale ou la philosophie religieuse de Hébreu, Paris, 1843, 2d. Edition 1892, translated into German by A. Jelinek, Die Cabala oder die Religionsphilosophie der Hebräer, Leipzig, 1844, with which must be compared D. H. Joel, Die Religionsphilosophie des Zohar, Ibid, 1840, which is an exceedingly good supplement to Frank's work. But an examination of the works published by Zuhns, Die Getestenslichen Vorträge der Juden, Berlin, 1831, page 405, Geiger, Melochaphnaeum, Ibid, 1840, Introduction, page 17, Sachs, Die Religiose Poesie der Juden in Spanien, Ibid, 1845, p. 327, Jelinek, Moses ben Skem Tob de Leon, Leipzig, 1851, could have convinced Etheridge that the Zohar, the textbook of the Cabala, is the pseudo-fabrication of Moses de Leon in the 13th century. That Landauer, died 1841, in his essays on the Cabala published in the Literaturblatt des Orients, 1845, page 178 ed seq., 1846, page 12 ed seq., ascribes the authorship of the Zohar to Abraham ben Samuel Abulafia towards the end of the second half of the 13th century, is the more weighty and instructive because he originally started with opinions of an exactly opposite character. Steinschneider, Jewish Literature, p. 299. Nevertheless, Etheridge's book was a good work. It was the praiseworthy attempt of an English Christian to acquaint the English-speaking people with the post-biblical literature of the Jews. For years after the publication of the above work, Canon Westcott, died 1901, published his Introduction to the Study of the Gospels, London, 1860, in which he incidentally refers to the Cabala, without adopting Etheridge's view as to the authorship of the Zohar. Oh, the contrary, he says, page 159, Boston, 1867, the Sefer HaZohar, or Book of Splendor, owes its existence to R. Moses of Leon in the 13th century, and this, he says in a note, has been satisfactorily established by Jelinek in his tract, Moses ben Skemtob de Leon und sein Verhaltnis zum Zohar, Leipzig, 1851. The warm approval of Jost is sufficient to remove any lingering doubt as to the correctness of Jelinek's conclusion, a Jelinek und die Cabala, Leipzig, 1852. The publication of Jelinek's Beitrag zur Geschichte der Cabala, 2 parts, Leipzig, 1852, and his Oswald Kabbalistischer Mystik, Part 1, Ibid, 1853. Stearns, Versuch einer umständlichen Analyse des Zohar, in Ben Shenanja, Monatschrift für Jüdische Theologie, Volumes 1-4, Segedin, 1858-1861, Jost's Geschichte des Judentums und seiner Sekten, Volume 3, pages 66-81, Leipzig, 1859. More especially of Grietz's Geschichte der Juden, 1 Volume 7, pages 73-87, 442,459, 487-507, Leipzig, 1863, paved the way for Christian D. Ginsburg's, now very scarce, Essay the Cabala, London, 1865. As a matter of course he adopts the results of modern scholarship and rejects the authorship of Simon ben Jokai. As far as we are aware, nothing has been published in English since 1865. The Cabala unveiled by S. L. M. Mathers, London, 1887, gives only a translation of some parts of the Zohar, which Nor von Rosenroth had rendered into Latin. Nevertheless, this work is interesting, because an English reader, provided he has enough patience, can get a taste of the Zoharic wisdom and unwisdom. How do you find this book? Any thoughts about the book or the author? Any suggestion for improvement? Please take a moment to share your thoughts in a comment. If you like it, share it with your friends who might enjoy it as well. Subscribe to keep in touch. Visit CompleteAudiobooks.com for more quality content. 1. Name and origin of the Cabala. By Cabala we understand that system of religious philosophy, or more properly, of Jewish theosophy, which played so important a part in the theological and exegetically literature of both Jews and Christians ever since the Middle Ages. The Hebrew word Cabala, from kibbul, properly denotes reception, then, a doctrine received by oral tradition. The term is thus in itself nearly equivalent to transmission, like the Latin traditio, in Hebrew Masorah, for which last, indeed, the Talmud makes it interchangeable in the statement given in Pirkei B'dai. 1. Moses received, kibbul, the law on Mount Sinai, and transmitted, Sarah, it to Joshua. The difference, however, between the word Cabala and the cognate term Masorah is that the former expressed the act of receiving, while the latter denotes the act of giving over, surrendering, transmitting. The name, therefore, tells us no more than that this theosophy has been received traditionally. In the oldest Jewish literature, Mishnah, Midrash, Talmud, the Cabala denotes the whole body of Jewish tradition. The name is even applied to the prophetic writings of the Old Testament, and the Hagiographa, in contradistinction to the Pentateuch. As a scientific system, the Cabala is also called Chokmat HaKabbalah, i.e. Science of Tradition, or Chokman Istara, abbreviated CHN, i.e., Chen, i.e., Secret Science or Wisdom, and its representatives and adherents delighted in calling themselves, masculine, i.e. intelligent, or with a play of words Yod CHN, i.e., connoisseurs of secret wisdom. Having defined the term Cabala, which was still commonly used for oral tradition in the 13th and 14th centuries even after the technical sense of the word was established, we must be careful to distinguish between Cabala and mysticism. Like other Eastern nations, the Jews were naturally inclined to theosophical speculation, and though this tendency may have been repressed by the definite teaching of revelation as long as they were confined within the sacred boundaries of Palestine, it found a freer scope after the exile. There were two subjects about which the Jewish imagination especially busied itself: the history of the creation, and the Merkabah, or the divine apparition to Ezekiel. Both touch the question of God's original connection with his creatures, and that of his continued intercourse with them. They treat of the mystery of nature and of providence, especially of revelation. And an attempt is made to answer the question, how the infinite God can have any connection or intercourse with finite creatures. It is difficult to say how far it is possible to trace with certainty Jewish mysticism. Even in the book of Sirach, Eklis, 49:8, it is the special praise of Ezekiel that he saw the chariot of the cherubim. When we come to the period of the Mishnah, we find the existence of a body of esoteric doctrine already presupposed. It is laid down that no one ought to discourse the history of creation, Gen I, with two, or the chariot, Ezek I, with one, unless he be a scholar, who has knowledge of his own, Chagiga 2:1. Further allusions to these mysterious doctrines occur in the Talmud, but any rash investigation of them was discouraged, as is shown by the story of the four sages in the enclosed garden, i.e., who were engaged in theosophical studies. One of them, it was said, had looked around and died, another had looked around and lost his reason, a third eventually tried to destroy the garden, two while the fourth alone had entered and returned in safety, Chagiga, Folios 14, Kernel 2. Little by little mysticism made its way from Palestine into Babylonia and found many followers. Its adepts called themselves men of faith. They boasted of possessing the means of obtaining a view of the divine household. By virtue of certain incantations, invocations of the names of God and the angels, and the recitation of certain prayer-like chants, combined with fasting and an ascetic mode of living, they pretended to be able to perform supernatural deeds. For this purpose they made use of amulets and cameos, camiath, and wrote upon them the names of God and the angels with certain signs. Miracle working was a trifle to these mystics. The books which they wrote only gave hints, and only those were initiated into the mystic secrets, in whose hand and forehead the adepts pretended to discover lines that proved them to be worthy of being initiated. Origin of the Cabala. Deferring until later the works belonging to this period, we will now speak of the origin of the Cabala. Although the name, Cabala, in its pregnant meaning is first used in the 13th century, yet Jewish tradition claims a high antiquity for the Cabala and traces it back, among others, to three famous Talmudists, as the proper founders of the Cabala. Viz. Rabbi Ismail ben Elisa, about 121 AD, Nechunja ben Hakana, about 70 AD, and especially Simon ben Jokai, about 150 AD, 3 the reputed author of the Zohar. Whatever may be the claims of these traditions, they must be rejected. The mystical speculations of the Cabala are entirely foreign to older Judaism, especially original Mosaism. It is true that the Talmud contains many things concerning God, heaven, hell, world, magic, etc. But these things were generally assigned to some individuals, and are elements derived from Parsism and Neoplatonism. And much as the Talmud and Midrash may otherwise speak of the three teachers mentioned before, such things are not recorded of them. The Cabala as a mystical system and its development as such undoubtedly belongs to the Middle Ages, beginning probably with the 7th century of our era, and culminating in the book Zohar. A fuller and more mature development of the Cabala is due to the speculations of later masters. The origin of the Cabala belongs to that period in which Judaism on the one hand was permeated by a crude anthropomorphic notion of the deity, whereas on the other hand Platonism and Aristotelianism strove for the ascendancy in formulating the fundamental doctrines of Jewish belief. With Moses Maimonides, 1135–1204, rationalism had reached its climax. The injunctions of the Bible were only to be explained by the light of reason. Only the simple, primary or literary sense, peshet, of the scripture was recognized. The existing allegorical interpretation, dirush, was considered either as rabbinical fancy, or one saw in it only a poetical form. Even the Talmud had been systematized and codified. Religion had become a more or less meaningless opus operatum. Philosophy had always been treated as something secondary, which had nothing to do with practical Judaism, as it is daily and hourly practiced. Maimonides, on the other hand, had introduced it into the holiest place in Judaism, and, as it were, gave Aristotle a place next to the doctors of the law. Instead of unifying Judaism, Maimonides caused a division, and the Maimonists and anti-Maimonists opposed each other. A reaction came and the Cabala stepped in as a counterpoise to the growing shallowness of the Maimonists' philosophy. The storm against his system broke out in Provence and spread over Spain. The latter country may be considered as the real home of the Cabala. When the Jews were driven from that country, the Cabala took root in Palestine and thence it was carried back into the different countries of Europe. The fundamental ideas of the Cabala are un-Jewish, derived from Philo, the Neoplatonists and the Neo-Pythagoreans. We sometimes even notice Gnostic influences. But the close amalgamation of these different elements with biblical and midrashic ideas has given to these foreign parts such a Jewish coloring, that at the first glance they appear as an emanation of the Jewish mental life. 2. The development of the Cabala in the pre-Zohar period. The history of the Cabala comprises a period of nearly 1,000 years. Its beginning may be traced back to the 7th century, whereas its last shoots belong to the 18th century. For convenience sake we can distinguish two periods, the one reaching from the 7th to the 13th century, the other from the 14th to the 18th century. The former is the time of gradual growth, development and progress, the other that of decline and decay. The origin of the Zohar in the 13th century forms the climax in the history of the Cabala. It became the treasury to the followers of this theosophy, a textbook for the students of the Cabala, the standard and code of the Kabbalistic system, the Bible of the Kabbalists. From the 7th to the 9th century we meet with the representatives of the mysteries of the Merkabah 5, which is expounded in the so-called Hekaloth, i.e., palaces. This work, which is ascribed to Ismail ben Elisa, opens with a description of God's throne and his household consisting of angelic hosts. In this mystical production, which has been reprinted by Jelinek in Bet HaMidrash, Volume 3, pp. 83–108, the praises of the Almighty God and his chariot throne are celebrated. We are told that each of the 7 heavenly palaces is guarded by 8 angels. A description of the formula is given by virtue of which these angelic guards are obliged to grant admission into the celestial palaces, also a description of the peculiar qualifications necessary for those who desire to enter into these palaces. Some hymns of praise and a conversation with God, Israel and the angels conclude this treatise, which like the Shir Kama or the treatise on the dimensions of the deity, also ascribed to Rabbi Ismail, knows nothing of the speculations of the En Saf, the 10 Sephiroth and the doctrine of the transmigration of souls. Another work belonging to this period is the Athajoth de Rabbi Akiba, i.e. the alphabet of Rabbi Akiba, which alternately treats each letter of the Hebrew alphabet as representing an idea as an abbreviation for a word, and as the symbol of some sentiment, according to its peculiar form. In order to attach to those letters moral, theoanthropic, angelological and mystical notions. This treatise is also given in Jelinek's work, cited above, Volume 3, pages 12–49, Leipzig, 1855. A Latin translation of Akiba's alphabet is given by Kircher, in his Oedipus Aegyptiacus 6 and in Bartolacci's Bibliotheca Rabbinica. 7. Bodenschatz in his Kirchliche Verfassung der heutigen Juden, Erlangen, 1748, gives in Part 3, page 15, the following specimen, on the words, "The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart," ps. 34:18, we read, "All who are of a broken heart are more agreeable before God than the ministering angels, because the ministering angels are remote from the divine majesty 360 million miles, as it is said in Is. 6. 2, above it stood the seraphim, memal lo, where the word to by way of gematria means 36,000. This teaches us that the body of the divine majesty is 2,336,000 miles long. From his loins upward are 1,180,000 miles, and from his loins downward 118 times 10,000 miles. But these miles are not like ours, but like his, God's, miles. For his mile is 1,000,000 ells long, and his ell contains 4 spans and a hand's breadth, and his span goes from one end of the world to the other, as is said is X. 12. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span. Another explanation is that the words, "and meted out heaven with the span," denote that the heaven and the heaven of all heavens is only 1 span long, wide and high, and that the earth with all the abysses is as long as the sole of the foot, and wide as the sole of the foot, etc. etc. Another part of Akiba's alphabet is the so-called Book of Enoch, 8, which describes the glorification of Enoch and his transformation into the angel Metatron, regarding him as the little God, in contradistinction to the great God. These mystical treatises came into existence in the course of time, and their teachings rapidly spread. So numerous became the disciples of mysticism in the 12th century that Maimonides found it necessary to denounce the system. Give no credence to the nonsense of the writers of charms and amulets, to what they tell you or to what you find in their foolish writings about the divine names, which they invent without any sense, calling them appellations of the deity, and affirming that they require holiness and purity and perform miracles. All these things are fables, a sensible man will not listen to them, much less believe in them. 9. A new stage in the development of the Cabala commences with the publication of the Book of Creation or Jezira, which is the first work that comprises the philosophical speculations of the age in one systematic whole. Scholars are now agreed that the Book of Jezira belongs to the 8th or 9th centuries, and that it has nothing to do with the Jezira book mentioned in the Talmud, where we are told that Rabbis Hanina and Oshaya studied it every Friday, whereby they produced a calf 3 years old and ate it, Sanhedrin, Fol. 65, Kernel 2, and whereby Rabbi Joshua ben Hananiah declared he could take fruit and instantly produce the trees which belonged to them, Jerusalem Sanhedrin, chapt. 7 towards the end. 10. The Sefer Jezira as we now have it, is properly a monologue on the part of Abraham, in which, by the contemplation of all that is around him, he ultimately arrived at the conviction of the unity of God. Hence the remark of the philosopher Jehuda Halevi, born about 1086, the Book of the Creation, which belongs to our father Abraham, demonstrates the existence of the deity and the divine unity, by things which are on the one hand manifold and multifarious, whilst on the other hand they converge and harmonize. And this harmony can only proceed from one who originated it, Kozari, 4:25. Referring the reader to the literature on the Sefer Jezira to Goldschmidt's book, pp. 35-46-11, we will state that the Book of Creation consists of 6 parakim or chapters, subdivided into 33 very brief mishnahs or sections, as follows: the first chapter has 12 sections, the second has 5, the third 5. The fourth 4, the fifth 3, and the sixth 4 sections. The doctrines which the book propounds are delivered in the style of aphorisms or theorems, and, pretending to be the dicta of Abraham, are laid down very dogmatically, in a manner becoming the authority of this patriarch, who, according to Artapanus, instructed King Pherethodes of Egypt in astrology, Eusebius, Prep. Evangelism, 9:18, fulfilled the whole law, before it was given, Apiosi Baruch, chap 57, Kiddushin, 14 Fin, and victoriously overcame 10 temptations 12, Perkaboth, v. 3. Theosophical Arithmetic. The book opens with the statement that, by 32 paths of secret wisdom, the Eternal, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the living God, the King of the universe, the merciful and gracious, the high and exalted God. He who inhabits eternity, glorious and holy is his name, bath created the world by means of number, word and writing, or numbered, I. 1. The book shows why there are just 32 of these. By an analysis of this number it seeks to exhibit, in a peculiar method of theosophical arithmetic, on the assumption that they are the signs of existence and thought, the doctrine that God produced all, and is over all. The universe being a development of original entity, and existence being but thought become concrete. In short, that instead of the heathenish or popular Jewish conception of the world as outward, or coexistent with deity, it is coequal in birth, having been brought out of nothing by God, thus establishing a pantheistic system of emanation. Of which, principally because it is not anywhere designated by name, one would think the writer was not himself quite conscious. The following will illustrate the curious proof of this argumentation. The number 32 is the sum of 10, the number of the 10 fingers, I, 3, and 22, the number of the Hebrew alphabet. This latter being afterwards further resolved into 3 plus 7 plus 12, I, 2. The first chapter, I, 2 to 8 treats of the decade and its elements, which are called figures in contradistinction from the 22 letters. This decade is the sign manual of the universe. In the details of this hypothesis the existence of divinity in the abstract is really ignored, though not formally denied. Thus the number 1 is its spirit as an active principle, in which all worlds and beings are yet enclosed. 1 is the spirit of the living God, blessed and again blessed be the name of him, who liveth for ever voice and spirit and word, and this is the Holy Ghost, I, 9. 2 is the spirit from this spirit, i.e. the active principle in so far as it has beforehand decided on creating, in it he engraved the 22 letters, I, 10. 3 is water, for is fire. In it he hewed the throne of glory, the Ophanim 13 and Seraphim, the sacred living creatures, and the angels of service, and of these 3 he founded his dwelling place, as it is said, he mocketh his angels' breaths. And his ministers a flaming fire, I, 11, 12. The 6 remaining figures, 5 to 10, are regarded severally as the sign manual of height, depth, east, west, north and south, forming the 6 sides of a cube, and representing the idea of form in its geometrical perfection, I, 13. In the words of the Book of Creation the hexade is thus described, 5, 3 letters from out the simple ones, he sealed spirit on the 3, and fastened them in his great name JHV. 14 and he sealed with them 6 outgoings, ends, terminations, he turned upwards, and he sealed it with JHV, 6, he sealed below, turned downwards, and sealed it with JVH. 7. He sealed eastward, he turned in front of him, and sealed it with HJV, 8, he sealed westward and turned behind, and sealed it with HVJ, 9, he sealed southward, and turned to his right, and sealed it with VJH. 10. He sealed northward, and turned to his left, and sealed it with VHJ. These are the Sephiroth, 1, Spirit of the living God, and 2, Wind, air or spirit, 15, 3, water, and 4, fire. And 5, height above and 6, below, 7, east and 8, west, 9, north and 10, south. Sephiroth is the plural of the word Sephira. Azariel derives the word from Saphar, to number. Later Kabbalists derive it either from Sephir, or from the Greek spheres, 16 and are not at all certain whether to regard the Sephiroth as principles, 17 or as substances, 18 or as potencies, powers, 19 or as intelligent worlds, 20 or as attributes or as entities, 21 or as organs of the deity, Kelim. We might fairly well translate the word Sephiroth by emanations. We see, however, that this alone establishes nothing real, but merely expounds the idea of possibility or actuality, at the same time establishing that which is virtualiter as really existing in God, the foundation of all things, from which the whole universe proceeded. The actual entities are therefore introduced in the subsequent chapters under the 22 letters. The connection between the two series is evidently the word, which in the first Sephira, number, is yet identical in voice and action with the spirit, 9. But afterwards these elements, separating as creator and substance, together produce the world, the materials of which are represented by the letters, severally divided into gutturals, labials, palatals, linguals and dentals, 2, 3. Since these by their manifold manifestations, name and describe all that exists. These 22 letters of the alphabet are then divided into 3 groups, consisting respectively of 1. The 3 mothers or fundamental letters, ch3. 2. 7 double, ch4, and 3. 12 simple consonants, chv. First are subtracted from the 22 letters the 3 mothers, aleph, mem, shin, i.e., the universal relations of 1. Principle, 2. Contrary principle, and 3. Balance, i.e., the intermediate. In the world, we have air, water, fire. This means, the heavens are from fire, the earth from water, and the air indicates the intermediate between the fire and the water. In the year, there is fire, and water, and wind. The heat comes from fire, cold from water, and moderation from wind, air, that is intermediate between them. In man, there is fire, water and wind. The head is from fire, the belly from water, and the body from wind that is intermediate between them. The 3 mothers or fundamental letters are followed by the 7 duplicate letters Beth, Gimel, Daleth, Kaf, Pe, Resh, Tau 22 duplicate. Because they are opposite as life and death. Peace and evil, wisdom and folly, riches and poverty, grace and ugliness, fertility and desolation. Rule and servitude, 4. 1. These 7 duplicate letters correspond to the 7 outgoings, above and below, east and west, north and south, and the holy temple in the middle, and it upbears the whole, 4. 2. From them God created. In the world, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. In man, wisdom, riches, dominion, life, favor, progeny, peace. In the year, Sabbath, Thursday, Tuesday, Sunday, Friday, Wednesday, Monday. With these 7 letters God also formed the 7 heavens, the 7 earths or countries, and the 7 weeks from the feast of Passover to Pentecost, 4, 3, 4. These letters also represent the 7 gates of issue in the soul. 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a mouth, and the 2 nostrils. Turning finally to the 12 single letters, chv, they show the relations of things so far as they can be apprehended in a universal category. By means of these 12 letters God created the 12 signs of the zodiac, viz. In the world, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricornus, Aquarius, Pisces. In the year, the 12 months, viz. Nisan, Ijar, Sivan, Tamus, Ab, Elul, Tishri, Cheshvan or Marcheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shebat, Adar. In man, the organs of sight, hearing, smelling, talking, taste, copulating, dealing, walking, thinking, anger, laughter, sleeping, chv, 1. They are so organized by God as to form at once a province, and yet be ready for battle, i.e., they are as well fitted for harmonious as for dissentious action. God has placed in all things one to oppose the other. Good to oppose evil, good to proceed from good, and evil from evil, good to purify evil, and evil to purify good, the good is in store for the good, and the evil is reserved for the evil, 6, 2. The 12 are arranged against each other in battle array, 3 serve love, 3 hatred, 3 engender life, and 3 death. The 3 loving ones are the heart, the ears, and the mouth. The 3 hating ones, the liver, the gall, and the tongue, but God the faithful King, rules over all 3 systems. 1, i.e., God, is over the 3 are over the 7. The 7 are over the 12, and all are joined together, the one with the other, 6, 3. We also learn that the 22 letters, though a small number, by their power of combination and transposition, yield an endless number of words and figures, and thus become the types of all the varied phenomena in the creation. Just as the 22 letters yield 231 types by combining Aleph, i.e., the first letter, with all the letters, and all the letters with Beth, i.e., the second letter, so all the formations and all that is spoken proceed from one name, ch2, 4. To illustrate how these different types are obtained, we will state that by counting the first letter with the second, the first letter with the third, and so on with all the rest of the alphabet, we obtain 21 types. By combining the second letter with the third, fourth, etc., we get 20 types. The third letter combined with the fourth, etc., yields 19 types. Finally, the 21st combined with the last letter yields 1 type. In this way we get, as the Hebrew table shows, 21 plus 20 plus 19 plus 18 plus 17 plus 16 plus 15 plus 14 plus 13 plus 12 plus 11 plus 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 is equal to 231, or Abaji ad a avazach at ai a al emanaz etc. BG BD BH BV BZ BCH BT by BK BL BM BN BS etc. GD GH GV GZ GCH GT GI GK GL GM GN GS etc. DH DV DZ DCH DT D DK DL DM DN DS etc. HV Hertz HCH HT High HK HL HM HN HS etc. The infinite variety in creation is still more strikingly exhibited by permutations, of which the Hebrew alphabet is capable, and through which an infinite variety of types is obtained. Hence the remark, 2 letters form 2 houses, 3 letters build 6 houses, 4 build 24, 5 build 120 houses, 6 build 720 houses. And from thenceforward go out and think what the mouth cannot utter and the ear cannot hear. 4. A few examples may serve as illustration. In order to ascertain how often a certain number of letters can be transposed, the product of the preceding number must be multiplied with it, thus. Letter 2 times 1 is equal to 2. 5 times 24 is equal to 120. 3 times 2 is equal to 6. 6 times 120 is equal to 720. 4 times 6 is equal to 24. 7 times 720 is equal to 5040. And so on. 2 letters form 2 houses, by using the first 2 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, A, B, 23 in the following manner. 1 equals up. 2 equals BA. 3 letters, A, B, G 24 build 6 houses, namely. 1 equals ABG, 2 equals AGB, 3 equals BAG, 4 equals BGA. 5 equals GAB, 6 equals GBA. For letters, A, B, G, D, 25 build 24 houses, viz. 1 equals ABD/13 equals GABD. 2 equals ABD/14 equals GAB. 3 equals AGBD/15 equals BAD. 4 equals AGBD/16 equals GBDA. 5 equals ADBD/17 equals DAB. 6 equals AJB/18 equals GBA. 7 equals BAG/19 equals DAB. 8 equals BAJ/20 equals DAG. 9 equals BGAD/21 equals BAG. 10 equals BDA/22 equals BGA. 11 equals BDAG/23 equals GAB. 12 equals BGA/24 equals GBA. The book of creation closes with the statement, and when Abraham our father had beheld, and considered, and seen, and drawn, and hewn, and obtained it, then the Lord of all revealed himself to him, and called him his friend, and made a covenant with him and with his seed. And he believed in Jehovah, and it was computed to him for righteousness. He made with him a covenant between the 10 toes, and that is circumcision, between the 10 fingers of his hand, and that is the tongue. And he bound 22 letters on his tongue, and showed him their foundation. He drew them with water, he kindled them with fire, he breathed them with wind, air, he burnt them in 7, he poured them forth in the 12 constellations, ch. 6, 4. Romantic cosmology. The examination of the contents of the Book of Jezira proves that it has as yet nothing in common with the cardinal doctrines of the Cabala, as exhibited in later works, especially in the Lober, where speculations about the being and nature of the deity, the En Sof 26 and the Sephiroth, which are the essence of the Cabala, are given. To the period of the Book of Jezira belongs the remarkable work which in the Amsterdam edition of 1601 is entitled, "This is the Book of the First Man," which was given to him by the angel Raziel. In this work the angel Raziel appears as the bearer and mediator of astrological and astronomical secrets, and shows the influence of the planets upon the sublunary world. To the same period belongs the Midrash Conan, a kind of romantic cosmology, newly translated into German by Wunschy in Israel's Lehrhallen, 3, Leipzig, 1909, pages 170 to 201. With the 13th century begins the crystallization of the Cabala, and Isaac the Blind, flourished 1190 to 1210, may be regarded as the originator of this lore. The doctrines of the Sephiroth 27 taught in the book Jezira are further developed by his pupils, especially by Rabbi Azariel, died 1238, in his commentary on the 10 Sephiroth, by way of questions and answers. An analysis of which is given in Jelinek's Beitrag zur Geschichte der Cabala, Leipzig, 1852, Part 2, p. 32f. In this commentary Azariel lays down the following propositions. 1. The primary cause and governor of the world is the En Sof, i.e., a being infinite, boundless, who is both immanent and transcendent. 2. From the En Sof emanated the Sephiroth, which are the medium between the absolute En Sof and the real world. 3. There are 10 intermediate Sephiroth. 4. They are emanations and not creations. 5. They are both active and passive. 6. The first Sephira is called inscrutable height, Ram Mala the second, wisdom, Chakma, the third, intelligence, Bina, the fourth, love, Chesed, the fifth, justice, Pakad, the sixth, beauty, Tiferet. The seventh, firmness, Nezak, the eighth, splendor, Had, the ninth, the righteous in the foundation of the world, Zadok Yesed Olam, and the 10th, righteousness, Tzedakah. The first 3 Sephiroth form the world of thought. The second 3 the world of the soul, and the 4 last the world of body, thus corresponding to the intellectual, moral and natural worlds. That Isaac the Blind must be regarded as the father of the Cabala, is acknowledged by some of the earliest and most intelligent Kabbalists themselves. And the author of the Kabbalistic work entitled Mercheth Halohath, said to be a certain Perez of the second part of the 13th century, frankly declares that the doctrine of the En Sof and the 10 Sephiroth is neither to be found in the law, prophets, or hagiographa, nor in the writings of the rabbins of blessed memory, but rests solely upon signs which are scarcely perceptible. Another remarkable book of this period is the Sefer Bahir, or Midrash of Nehanja ben Hakana. According to this work, long before the creation God caused a metaphysical matter to proceed, which became a fullness, mellow, of blessing and salvation for all forms of existence. The 10 divine emanations, which are not yet called Sephiroth, but Mamarim and appear as categories endowed with creative power, are connected with the attributes, middeth, of God as well as with his fingers and other members. The doctrine of metempsychosis is already given here in its most important features. The work itself, though ascribed to Nehanja, is of much later date, because it speaks of the Hebrew vowels and accents. Only a part of the Bahir book has been published, first at Amsterdam, 1651, then again at Berlin, 1706. The greater part is still in manuscript in the libraries at Paris and Leiden. The conversion of the famous Talmudist and scholar Moses Nachmanides 28, 1194–1270, to the newly born Cabala gave to it an extraordinary importance and rapid spread amongst his numerous followers. In the division of the synagogues caused by the writings of Maimonides, Nachmanides took the part of the latter, probably more on account of the esteem he felt for this great man than for any sympathy with his opinions. Maimonides intended to give Judaism a character of unity, but he produced the contrary. His aim was to harmonize philosophy and religion, but the result was a schism in the synagogue, which gave birth to this queer kind of philosophy called Cabala, and to this newly born Cabala Nachmanides became converted. Though he was at first decidedly adverse to this system. One day the Kabbalist who was most zealous to convert him was caught in a house of ill fame, and condemned to death. He requested Nachmanides to visit him on the Sabbath, the day fixed for his execution. Nachmanides reproved him for his sins, but the Kabbalist declared his innocence, and that he would partake with him of the Sabbath meal. According to the story, he did as he promised, as by means of the Kabbalistic mysteries he effected his escape, and an ass was executed in his stead, and he himself was suddenly transported into Nachmanides' house. From that time Nachmanides became a disciple of the Cabala, and was initiated into its mysteries, the tenets of which pervade his numerous writings, especially his commentary on the Pentateuch. To the first half of the 12th century belongs the Masacheth Azaluth or the Treatise on the Emanations, supposed to have been written by Rabbi Isaac Nasir. From the analysis given by Jelinek, Oswald Kabbalistischer Mystik, Part 1, Leipzig, 1853, we learn that the prophet Elijah propounded that 1. God at first created light and darkness, the one for the pious and the other for the wicked, darkness having come to pass by the divine limitation of light. 2. God produced and destroyed sundry worlds, which, like 10 trees planted upon a narrow space, contend about the sap of the soil, and finally perish altogether. 3. God manifested himself in 4 worlds, viz. Azala, Bariah, Jazira and Asiya, corresponding to the 4 letters of his name JHVH. In the Azalatic luminous world is the divine majesty, the Shekinah. In the Bariatic world are the souls of the pious, all the blessings, the throne of God, who sits on it in the form of Acterial, the crown of God, the first Sapphira Keter, and the 7 different luminous and splendid regions. In the Jezeratic world are the sacred animals in the vision of Ezekiel, the 10 classes of angels with their princes, who are presided over by the fiery Metatron 29 the spirits of men, and the accessory work of the divine chariot. In the Asalatic world are the Ophanim, the angels who receive the prayers, who are appointed over the will of man, who control the action of mortals, who carry on the struggle against evil, and who are presided over by the angelic prince Sinadelphon. 30. 4. The world was founded in wisdom and understanding, Parov 3. 13. And God in his knowledge originated 50 gates of understanding. 5. God created the world as the book Jazira already teaches by means of the 10 Sephiroth, which are both the agencies and qualities of the deity. The 10 Sephiroth are called crown, wisdom, intelligence, mercy, fear, beauty, victory, majesty and kingdom. They are merely ideal and stand above the concrete world, pages 2, 3. The conversion of Tadros ben Joseph Halavai Abulafia, 1234–1304, to the Cabala, gave to this science a great influence, on account of Abulafia's distinguished position as physician and financier in the court of Sancho IV, King of Castile. The influence of Abulafia, whose works are still in manuscript, can be best seen from the fact that 4 Kabbalists of the first rank ranged themselves under his banner and dedicated their compositions to him. These 4 Kabbalists were Isaac ibn Latif or Alatif, Abraham Abulafia, Joseph Chikatilla, and Moses de Leon, all Spaniards. Mysteries of the Cabala. Isaac ibn Latif, about 1220–1290, starting with the thought that a philosophical view of Judaism was not the right road to the sanctuary, endeavored to combine philosophy with Cabala. He laid more stress than his predecessors on the close connection between the spiritual and the material world, between God and his creation. For the Godhead is in all, and all is in it. In soul-inspiring prayers the human spirit is raised to the world spirit, Sechel Hapol, to which it is united in a kiss, and, so influencing the deity, it draws down blessings on the sublunar world. But not every mortal is capable of such spiritual and efficacious prayer. Therefore the prophets, the most perfect men, were obliged to pray for the people, for they alone knew the power of prayer. The unfolding and revelation of the deity in the world of spirits, spheres, and bodies a lattice explained by mathematical forms. The mutual relation thereof is the same as that of the point extending and thickening into a line, the line into the plane into the expanded body. An enthusiastic contemporary of Aladif was Abraham ben Samuel Abulafia 31, born at Saragossa, 1240, died 1291. He was an eccentric personage, full of whims, and fond of adventures. Not satisfied with philosophy, he gave himself to the mysteries of the Cabala in their most fantastic extremes, as the ordinary doctrine of the Sephiroth did not satisfy him. He sought after something higher, for prophetic inspiration. Through it he discovered a higher Cabala, which offered the means of coming into spiritual communion with the Godhead, and of obtaining prophetic insight. To analyze the words of Holy Writ, especially those of the divine name, to use the letters as independent notions, notaricon, or to transpose the component parts of a word in all possible permutations, so as to form words from them, seraph. Or finally to employ the letters as numbers, gematria, are indeed means of securing communion with the spirit world. But this alone is not sufficient. To be worthy of a prophetic revelation, one must lead an ascetic life, retire into a quiet closet, banish all earthly cares, clothe himself in white garments, wrap himself up with talith, i.e. the fringed garment, and phylacteries, and devoutly prepare his soul, as if for an interview with the deity. He must pronounce the letters of God's name at intervals, with modulations of the voice, or write them down in a certain order under divers energetic movements, turnings and bendings of the body, till the mind becomes dazed and the heart is filled with a glow. When one has gone through these practices and is in such a condition, the fullness of the Godhead is shed abroad in the human soul, the soul then unites itself with the divine soul in a kiss, and prophetic revelation follows quite naturally. In this way he laid down his Cabala, in antithesis to the superficial or baser Cabala, which occupies itself with the Sephiroth, and, as he gibingly said, erects a sort of ten-unity, instead of the Christian Trinity. Abulafia went to Italy, and in Urbino he published, 1279, prophetic writings, in which he records his conversations with God. In 1281 he undertook to convert the Pope, Martin IV, to Judaism. In Messina he imagined that it was revealed to him that he was the Messiah, and announced that the restoration of Israel would take place in 1296. Many believed in him and prepared themselves for returning to the Holy Land. Others, however, raised such a storm of opposition that Abulafia had to escape to the island of Comino, near Malta, about 1288, where he remained for some time, and wrote sundry Kabbalistic works. Of his many works Jelinek published his rejoinder to Solomon ben Adarath, who attacked his doctrines and pretensions as Messiah and Prophet. 32. A disciple of Abulafia was Joseph Chikatilla of Medina Kelly, who died in Penjafil after 1305. He, too, occupied himself with the mysticism of letters and numbers, and with the transposition of letters. His writings are in reality only an echo of Abulafia's fancies. The same delusion is apparent in both. Chikatilla's system is laid down in his Jinneth Egos, i.e., Garden of Nuts, published at Hanau, 1615, and Share Ora, i.e. The Gate of Light, first published at Mantua, 1561, in Krakow, 1600, and translated into Latin by Nor von Rosenroth in the first part of his Cabala Denudata, Sulzbach, 1677-78. But far more influential and more pernicious than Aladif, Abulafia and Chikatilla was Moses de Leon, born in Leon about 1250, died in Arevalo, 1305, the author of a book which gave the Cabala a firm foundation and wide circulation. In brief, raised it to the zenith of its power. This book is known by the name of Zohar or Splendor. At first he published his productions under his own name, about 1285. But as his writings were not sufficiently noticed, and brought him but little fame and money, he hit upon a much more effective means and commenced the composition of books under feigned but honored names. If he put the doctrines of the Cabala into the mouth of an older, highly venerated authority, he was sure to be successful in every respect. And he selected for this purpose the Tannaite Simon ben Jokai, 33, who according to tradition spent 13 years in a cave, solitary and buried in profound reflection, and whom ancient mysticism represented as receiving revelations from the prophet Elijah. Simon ben Jokai was assuredly the right authority for the Cabala. But he must not write or speak Hebrew, but Chaldee, a language peculiarly fit for secrets, and sounding as if from another world. And thus there came into the world a book, the Zohar, which for many centuries was held by the Jews as a heavenly revelation, and was studied even by Christians. 3. The Zohar. The titles of the Zohar vary. It is called Midrash of Rabbi Simon ben Jokai, from its reputed author, Midrash, Let There Be Light, from the words in Gen I, 4, more commonly, Seper HaZohar, from Dan 12. 3. Where the word Zohar is used for, the brightness of the firmament. The title in full is, Seper HaZohar al-HaTorah, Mi'ish Elohim Kodesh, Humor Mi'at HaTorah, are Simon ben Jokai, etc., i.e. the Book of Splendor on the Law, by the very holy and venerable man of God, the Tannaite Rabbi Simon ben Jokai, of blessed memory. The Editio Princeps is the one of Mantua, 3 volumes, 1558 to 1560, and has often been reprinted. The best edition of the Book of Zohar is that by Christian Nor von Rosenroth, with Jewish commentaries, Sulzbach, 1684, folios, to which his rare Cabala Denudata, 1677 to 1684, forms an ample introduction. This edition was reprinted with an additional index, Amsterdam, 1714, 1728, 1772, 1805, 3 volumes. Recent editions of the Zohar were published at Breslau, 1866, 3 volumes, Livorno, 1877-78, in 7 parts, and Wilna, 1882, 3 volumes, 1882-83 in 10 parts, containing many commentaries and additions. The body of the work takes the form of a commentary of a highly mystic and allegorical character extending over the entire Pentateuch. But the Zohar is not considered complete without the addition of certain appendices attributed to the same author or to some of his personal or successional disciples. These supplementary portions are 1. Sifra di Tzanayatha, i.e. the Book of Secrets, or Mysteries, contained in Volume 2, 176 to 178. It contains 5 chapters and is chiefly occupied with discussing the questions involved in the creation. In the 2nd and 3rd chapters the prophet Elijah communicates the secret which he learned in the heavenly school, that before the creation of the world God was unknown to man, but made known his essence after the creation of the world. The history of the creation is represented under the figure of a scale, which adjusts the opposite aspects of God before and after the creation. This portion has been translated into Latin by Rosenroth in the 2nd volume of his Cabala Denudata, Frankfurt on the Main, 1684, Englished by Mathers, Lock Sit, pages 43 to 108. 2. Itera Rabba, i.e. the Great Assembly, referring to the community or college of Simon's disciples in their conferences for Kabbalistic discussion. These discussions are chiefly occupied with a description of the form and various members of the deity. A disquisition on the revelation of the deity, in his 2 aspects of the aged and the young, to the creation and the universe, as well as on the diverse gigantic members of the deity, such as the head, the beard, the eyes, the nose, etc., etc. A dissertation on pneumatology, demonology, etc., etc. This part is generally found in Volume 3, pages 127b, 145a, and has been translated into Latin by Rosenroth, Lock Sit, and Englished by Mathers, pages 109 to 257. 3. Itera Zuta, i.e. the small assembly, referring to the few disciples who still assembled for Kabbalistic discussion towards the end of their master's life or after his decease. It is to a great extent a recapitulation of the Itera Rabba, and concludes with recording the death of Simon ben Jokai, the sacred light and the medium through whom God revealed the contents of the Zohar. This part is found in Volume 3, 287b, 296b, and from the Latin of Rosenroth, Volume 2 of the Cabala Denudata, it has been Englished by Mathers, pages 259 to 341. To these 3 larger appendices are added 15 other minor fragments, viz. 4. Saba, i.e. The Aged Man, also called Saba Demishpatim, or the Discourse of the Aged in Mishpatim, given in 294a, 114a. The Aged is the prophet Elijah who holds converse with Rabbi Simon about the doctrine of metempsychosis, and the discussion is attached to the sabbatic section called Mishpatim, i.e., Exodus 21, L24. 18. 5. Midrash Ruth, a fragment. 6. Seper HaBahir, i.e., the Book of Clear Light. 7 and 8. Tosefta and Matanatan, i.e., small additional pieces, which are found in the 3 volumes. 9. Rea Mehemna, i.e., the Faithful Shepherd, found in the 2nd and 3rd volumes. The Faithful Shepherd is Moses who holds a dialogue with Rabbi Simon, at which not only the prophet Elijah is present, but Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Aaron, David, Solomon, and even God himself make their appearance. 10. Hekaloth, i.e. The Palaces, found in the 1st and 2nd volumes, treats of the topographical structure of paradise and hell. 11. Sither Torah, i.e., the secrets of the law. 12. Midrash HaNelam, i.e. the concealed treatise, in which passages of Scripture are explained mystically. Thus Lot's 2 daughters are the 2 proclivities in man, good and evil. 110. It also discourses on the properties and destiny of the soul. 13. Reis de Razin, i.e., Mysteries of Mysteries, contained in 270a, 75a, is especially devoted to the physiognomy of the Cabala, and the connection of the soul with the body. 14. Midrash Chazith, on the Song of Songs. 15. Mamer to Chatzi, a discourse, so entitled from the first words, Come and See. 16. Yanuka, i.e., the youth, given in 3, 186a, 192a, records the discourses delivered by a young man who according to R. Simon was of superhuman origin. 17. Pakuda, i.e., illustrations of the law. 18. Chibura Kadma, i.e., the early work. The body of the work is sometimes called Zohar Gadol, the Great Zohar. Authorship of the Zohar. Who is the author of this remarkable book, which has continued to be a textbook up to the present day, for all those who have espoused the doctrines of the Cabala? We have anticipated the answer, but let us see which reasons were adduced by modern scholarship to prove that the Zohar is a forgery of the 13th century. Now the Zohar pretends to be a revelation from God communicated through Rabbi Simon ben Jokai to his select disciples, according to the Iter Azuda, Zohar 3, 287b. This declaration and the repeated representation of Rabbi Simon ben Jokai, as speaking and teaching throughout the production fixed the authorship upon Rabbi Simon, an opinion maintained not only by Jews for centuries, but even by distinguished Christian scholars. On the other hand, it has been clearly demonstrated by such Jewish scholars as Zunes, Geiger, Jelinek, Greetz, Steinschneider, and a host of others, that the Zohar is not the production of Rabbi Simon, but of the 13th century. By Moses de Leon, 1250 to 1305. 34 Simon ben Jokai was a pupil of Rabbi Akiba. But the earliest mention of the book's existence occurs in the year 1290, and the anachronisms of its style and in the facts referred to, together with the circumstance that it speaks of the vowel points and other Masoretic inventions which are clearly posterior to the Talmud, justify J. Marinus, although too often extravagant in his willful attempts to depreciate the antiquity of the latter Jewish writings, in asserting that the author could not have lived much before the year 1000 of the Christian era, Exercitations Biblici, pp. 358 to 369, this later view of the authorship is sustained by the following reasons. 1. The Zohar most fulsomely praises its own author, calls him the sacred light, and exalts him above Moses, the faithful shepherd, Zohar 3, 132b. 144a, while the disciples deify Rabbi Simon, before whom all men must appear, 2, 38a. 2. The Zohar quotes and mystically explains the Hebrew vowel points, 16b, 24b, 2, 116a, 3, 65a, which were introduced later. 35. 3. The Zohar, 2, 32a, mentions the Crusades, the temporary taking of Jerusalem by the Crusaders from the infidels, and the retaking of it by the Saracens. 4. The Zohar, 3, 212b, records events which transpired d. 1264. 5. The doctrine of En Sof and the Sephiroth, as well as the metempsychosion retribution, were not known before the 13th century. 6. The very existence of the Zohar, according to the stanch Kabbalist Yehuda Chayoth, about 1500, was unknown to such distinguished Kabbalists as Nachmanides and Ben Adrath, 1235-1310, the first who mentions it is Tadros Abulafia, 1234-1306. 7. Isaac of Akko, about 1290, affirms that the Zohar was put into the world from the head of a Spaniard. 8. The Zohar contains passages which Moses de Leon translated into Aramaic from his works, e.g. the Sefer Hariman, as Jelinek has demonstrated in his Moses de Leon and Sein Verhaltnis zum Zohar, Leipzig, 1851, pages 21-36, see also Greets, Geschichte der Juden, 7, 498, 2d edition, 1873, page 477 e-seek. These are some of the reasons why the Zohar is now regarded as a pseudograph of the 13th century, and that Moses de Leon should have palmed the Zohar upon Simon ben Jokai was nothing remarkable. Since this rabbi is regarded by tradition as the embodiment of mysticism. There was also a financial reason, for from the book Judaism, pages 88, 89, 95, ed. Filipowski, London, 1857, we learn that when his wife asked him why he published the production of his own intellect under another man's name, Moses de Leon replied that if he were to publish it under his own name nobody would buy it. Whereas under the name of Rabbi Simon ben Jokai it yielded him a large revenue. With the appearance of the Zohar we find also a Zohar school, which is a combination and absorption of the different features and doctrines of all the former methods, without any plan or method. And we must not be surprised at the wild speculations which we so often find in the writings of the post-Zohar period. In Spain especially the study of the Zohar took deep root, and found its way to Italy, Palestine and Poland. 4. The Cabala in the post-Zohar period. The new textbook of religion which was introduced into Judaism by stealth, placed the Cabala, which a century before had been unknown, on the same level as the Bible and the Talmud. And to a certain extent on a still higher level. The Zohar undoubtedly produced good, in so far as it opposed enthusiasm to the legal dryasdust manner of the study of the Talmud, stimulated the imagination and the feelings, and cultivated a disposition that restrained the reasoning faculty. But the ills which it has brought on Judaism outweigh the good by far. The Zohar confirmed and propagated a gloomy superstition, and strengthened in people's minds the belief in the kingdom of Satan, in evil spirits and ghosts. Through its constant use of coarse expression, often verging on the sensual, in contradistinction to the chaste, pure spirit pervading Jewish literature, the Zohar sowed the seeds of unclean desires. And later on produced a sect that laid aside all regard for decency. Finally, the Zohar blunted the sense for the simple and the true. And created a visionary world in which the souls of those who zealously occupied themselves with it were lulled into a sort of half-sleep and lost the faculty of distinguishing between right and wrong. Its quibbling interpretations of Holy Writ, adopted by the Kabbalists and others infected with this mannerism, perverted the verses and words of the Holy Book, and made the Bible the wrestling ground of the most curious insane notions. During the 13th century the Cabala was represented in Italy by Menahem di Recanati, who wrote a commentary on the Pentateuch which is little else than a commentary on the Zohar. This work was translated into Latin by Pico della Mirandola. At the beginning of the 14th century Joseph ben Abraham ibn Wacker, 1290–1340, endeavored to reconcile the Cabala with philosophy, and to this end wrote a treatise on the cardinal doctrines of the Cabala. An analysis of this treatise, which is still in manuscript in the Bodleian Library, Cod. Laud. 119, described by Uri No. 384, is given by Steinschneider in Ersch and Gruber's Allgemeine Enzyklopädie, Part 2, Volume 31, page 100f. During the 14th and 15th centuries the Cabala was especially cultivated in Spain. In unmeasured terms the Zoharites denounced their co-religionists who could not see the advantages of the Cabala. Prominent among the Zoharites was Abraham of Granada, who composed, between 1391 and 1409, a Kabbalistic work Berith Menuchat, The Covenant of Peace, Amsterdam, 1648, a farrago of strange names of the deity in the angels, of transposed letters, and jugglery with vowels and accents. He had the hardihood, says Greets, to teach that those who could not apprehend God by Kabbalistic methods belonged to the weak in faith, were ignorant sinners, and like the depraved and the apostate were overlooked by God, and not found worthy of his special providence. He thought that the relinquishment of their religion by cultured Jews was explained by their fatal application to scientific study, and their contempt for the Cabala. On the other hand he professed to see in the persecutions of 1391, and in the conversion of so many prominent Jews to Christianity, the tokens of the Messianic age, the suffering that must precede it, and the approach of the redemption. Another such writer was Shem Tab ben Joseph ibn Shem Tab, died 1430, author of Emunath, i.e. Faithfulness, Ferrara, 1557, in which he attacks Jewish thinkers and philosophers as heretics, and maintains that the salvation of Israel depends upon the Cabala. The third writer was Moses Botero, or Boterello, also a Spaniard, who claimed to be a thaumaturge and prophet, and even announced himself as the Messiah. He prophesied that in the spring of 1393 the Messianic age would be ushered in. As the Cabala penetrated all branches of life and literature, voices were also raised against the Zohar. The first among the Jews who opposed its authority was Elias del Medigo, who in his Bechineth Hadath, i.e. Examination of the Law, written in December, 1491, openly expressed his opinion that the Zohar was the production of a forger, and that the Cabala was made up of the rags and tatters of the Neoplatonic school. But his voice and that of others had no power to check the rapid progress of the Cabala, which had now found its way from Spain and Italy into Palestine and Poland. Wonder workers and prophets. Passing over some minor advocates and teachers of the Cabala, we must mention two scholars in Palestine, who distinguished themselves as masters of the Cabala, Moses Cordovero 36 and Isaac Luria. The former, 1522–1570, was a pupil of Solomon Alcabez 37 and wrote many works on the Cabala. His principal work is the Pardes Rimmonim, i.e., the Garden of Pomegranates. Krakow, 1591, excerpts of which have been translated into Latin by Bartolacci in Bibliotheca Magna Rabbinica, Volume 4, page 231f, and by Nor von Rosenroth, Tractatus de Anima ex Libro Pardes Rimonim, in his Cabala Denudata, Sulzbach, 1677. Cordovero is chiefly occupied with the scientific speculations of the Cabala, or the speculative Cabala, in contradistinction to the wonder-working Cabala, which was represented by Isaac Luria, born in Jerusalem in 1534, and died 1572. He claimed to have constant interviews with the prophet Elijah, who communicated to him sublime doctrines. He visited the sepulchres of ancient teachers, and there, by prostrations and prayers, obtained from their spirits all manner of revelations. He was convinced that he was the Messiah, the son of Joseph, and that he was able to perform all sorts of miracles. He imagined a complete system of transmigration and combination of souls. He saw spirits everywhere. He saw how the souls were set free from the body at death, how they hovered in the air, or rose out of their graves. On the Sabbath he dressed in white, and wore a fourfold garment to symbolize the four letters of the name of God. His sentiments he delivered orally, and his disciples treasured up his marvelous sayings, whereby they performed miracles and converted thousands to the doctrines of this theosophy. His disciples were divided into two classes, the initiated and the novices, who boastfully called themselves Gurari, i.e., the lion's whelps. They systematically circulated the most absurd stories about Luria's miracles, and thus it came about that his Kabbalistic doctrines caused inexpressible harm in Jewish circles. Through Luria's influence a Judaism of the Zohar and the Cabala was formed side by side with the Judaism of the Talmud and the rabbis. For it was due to him that the spurious Zohar was placed upon a level with, indeed higher than, the Holy Scriptures and the Talmud. The real exponent of Luria's Kabbalistic system was Chaim Vital Calabrese 38, 1543–1620. After his master's death he diligently collected all the manuscript notes of the lectures delivered by Luria, which together with his own jottings Vital published under the title of Ez Chaim, i.e. The Tree of Life, 39 having spent over 30 years upon their preparation. The work consists of 6 parts. That portion which treats of the doctrine of metempsychosis, Pagilgulim, is found in a Latin translation in Nor von Rosenrotha's work. The Luria Vital system found many adherents everywhere. Abraham de Hura, died 1639, wrote in Spanish 2 Kabbalistic works, the House of God, Beth Elohim, and the Gate of Heaven, Shar Hashemayim, which the Amsterdam preacher Isaac Abogue translated into Hebrew. Both are given in a Latin translation in Nor von Rosenrotha's work, together with a translation of The Valley of the King, Emek Hamelech, by Naphtali Frankfurter. Besides these we may mention Isaiah Horwitz, died at Tiberias in 1629, author of Shni Looketh Habrath, abbreviated Sheila, i.e., the 2 Tables of the Covenant, a kind of real encyclopedia of Judaism on a Kabbalistic basis. This work has been often reprinted and enjoys a great reputation among the Jews. Abridgments of it were frequently published, Amsterdam, 1683, Venice, 1705, Warsaw, 1879. There were not wanting those who opposed the Cabala. Of the numerous opponents which the Zohar and Luria Vital's works called forth, none was so daring, so outspoken and powerful as Leon de Medina of Venice, 1571–1648. He is best known as the author of Historia de Riti Hebraeae et Observanza degli Hebraei di questi tempi, or the History of the Rites, Customs and Manner of Life of the Jews, Padua, 1640, and translated into Latin, French, Dutch, English. 40. But besides this and other works, he also wrote a polemical treatise against the Kabbalists, whom he despised and derided, entitled Ari Noam, I, Roaring Lion, published by Julius I, Leipzig, 1840. In this treatise he shows that the Kabbalistic works, which are pawned upon ancient authorities, are pseudonymous, that the doctrines themselves are mischievous, and that the followers of this system are inflated with proud notions, pretending to know the nature of God better than anyone else, and to possess the nearest and best way of approaching the deity. He even went so far as to question whether God will ever forgive those who printed the Kabbalistic works, Comp. 1st, page 7, and this no doubt, because so many Kabbalists joined the church. But no opposition could stem the tide of the Cabala. Its wonder-working branch had now largely laid hold on the minds and fancies of the Jews, and was producing among them the most mournful and calamitous effects. The chief actor in this tragedy was the Kabbalist Sabbatai Zebi, 41, born at Smyrna, July, 1641. When 15 years of age he rapidly mastered the mysteries of the Cabala, which he expounded before crowded audiences at the age of 18. When 24 years of age, he revealed to his disciples that he was the Messiah, the Son of David, the true Redeemer, and that he was to redeem and deliver Israel from their captivity. At the same time he publicly pronounced the Tetragrammaton, 42, which the high priest was only permitted to do on the Day of Atonement. As he would not desist, he was excommunicated by the Jewish sages at Smyrna. He went to Salonika, Athens, Moria and Jerusalem, teaching his doctrines, proclaiming himself the Messiah, anointing prophets and converting thousands upon thousands. As his followers prepared to be led back by him to Jerusalem, they wound up their affairs, and in many places trade was entirely stopped. By the order of the Sultan, Muhammad IV, Sabbatai Zevi was arrested and taken before him at Adrianople. The Sultan said to him, I am going to test thy messiahship. 3 poisoned arrows shall be shot into thee, and if they do not kill thee, I too will believe that thou art the Messiah. He saved himself by embracing Islamism in the presence of the Sultan, who gave him the name Effendi, and appointed him Kapijibashi. Sabbathai died September 10, 1676, after having ruined thousands upon thousands of Jewish families. In spite of this fiasco, the number of Sabbathai's followers was not diminished. Famous as a champion of orthodoxy was Jacob Israel Emden, 1696–1776, rabbi of Altona. During his rabbinate there, the famous Jonathan Ibenschutz 43, born in Krakow in 1690, was called to Altona in 1750, since the German and Polish Jews were divided in that place. As every rabbi was regarded as a sort of magician, the newcomer was expected to stop the epidemic raging at that time in the city. Ibenschutz prepared amulets, which he distributed among the people. For curiosity's sake one was opened, and 2. In it was written, O thou God of Israel, who dwellest in the beauty of thy power, send down salvation to this person through the merit of thy servant Sabbathai Zevi, in order that thy name, and the name of the Messiah Sabbathai Zevi, may be hallowed in the world. This amulet came into the hands of Emden. Ibenschutz denied all connection with the adherents of Sabbathai, and as he had already gained a great influence, he was believed, at least, almost everybody kept quiet. But Emden was not quiet, and finally the ban was pronounced against Ibenschutz. Even the King Frederick V of Denmark sided with Emden, and Ibenschutz lost his position. Being forsaken by his friends, Ibenschutz went to his former pupil, Moses Gerson Cohen, who after baptism took the name of Karl Anton. Anton wrote an apology in behalf of his teacher, which he dedicated to the King of Denmark. This and other influences had the effect that the whole affair was dropped and Ibenschutz was elected anew as rabbi of the congregation. Ibenschutz died in 1764 and was followed 12 years later by his opponent Emden. Both are buried in the Jewish cemetery of Altona. Another Zoharite was Jacob Frank 44, Jankiu Lebowicz, the founder of the Jewish sect of the Frankists, born in Poland in 1712. He acquired a great reputation as a Kabbalist, and settled in Podolia, where he preached a new doctrine, the fundamental principles of which he had borrowed from the teachings of Sabbathai Zevi. He was arrested through the influence of the rabbis, but was liberated through the intervention of the Roman Catholic clergy, and authorized by the king to profess freely his tenets. His followers then, under the name of Zoharites and anti-Talmudists, oppressed their former adversaries in turn. As the papal nuncio at Warsaw declared against them, Frank and most of his adherents embraced Christianity. Frank continued to make proselytes and his sect increased in Poland and Bohemia. He lived in princely style on means furnished him by his followers, and died at Offenbach, in Hesse, December 10, 1791. The Kabbalists of the 18th century, with the exception of Moses Chaim Luzzatto, born 1707, died 1747, are of little importance. Modern influences gradually put a stop to the authority of the Cabala, and modern Judaism sees in the Cabala in general only an historical curiosity or an object of literary historical disquisitions. 5. The most important doctrines of the Cabala. After having become acquainted in previous chapters with the principal actors in the Kabbalistic drama, we are now prepared to examine the tenets of the Cabala. Different from the system as exhibited in the Book of Creation or Jezira is that of the Zohar, because the more difficult, since it embraces not merely the origin of the world, but likewise speculates on the essence of God and the properties of man. In other words, it treats of theology, cosmology and anthropology. Starting from the idea of the Supreme Being as boundless in his nature, which necessarily implies that he is an absolute unity and inscrutable, and that there is nothing without him. God is called En Sof, i.e., endless, boundless. In this boundlessness God cannot be comprehended by the intellect, nor described in words, for there is nothing which can grasp him and depict him to us. 45 And as such he is in a certain sense not existent, I.e. since, as far as our mind is concerned, that which is incomprehensible does not exist. The En Sof, not being an object of cognition, made his existence known in the creation of the world by means of attributes or mediums, the 10 Sephiroth, or intelligences, radiations, emanations, emanating from the Ein Sof, and which in their totality represent and are called the Adam Kadmon, the primordial or archetypal man. The first Sephira is called Kether, crown, the second Chakma, wisdom, the third Bina, intelligence, the fourth Chesed, mercy, the fifth Din, judgment, the sixth Tifereth, beauty, the seventh Nezak, splendor. The eighth Had, majesty, the ninth Jesed, foundation, the 10th Malchith, kingdom. Now the first Sephira, which is called the crown, the aged, 46 the primordial or the smooth point, 47 the white head, the long face, macroprosopon, the inscrutable height. 48 contained the other 9 Sephiroth and gave rise to them in the following order. From the first Sephira proceeded a masculine or active potency designated, 2, Chakma, wisdom, and an opposite, i.e., a feminine or passive potency, called, 3, Bina, intelligence. These two opposite potencies are joined together by the first potency, and thus yield the first triad of the Sephiroth. From the junction of the foregoing opposites, which are also called Father, Abba, and Mother, Imma, emanated again the masculine or active potency called, 4, Chesed, mercy or love, also Gedula, greatness. And from this again emanated the feminine or passive potency called, 5, Din, judgment, also Gebura, judicial power. From this again emanated the uniting potency, 6, Tifereth, beauty. We have thus the second trinity of the Sephiroth. Now beauty beamed forth the masculine or active potency, 7, Nezak, splendor, and this again gave rise to, 8, the feminine or passive potency Had, majesty, from it again emanated, 9, Jesed, foundation, which yields the third trinity. From Jesed, finally emanated, 10, Malchith, kingdom, also called Skakina. The Kabbalists delight in representing the 10 Sephiroth under different forms. Now as Adam Kadmon, primordial or archetypal man, now as the Kabbalistic tree or the Elon, in which the crown is represented by the first Sephira and the root by the last. The divine man as to the Adam Kadmon, the crown represents the head. Wisdom, the brains, intelligence which unites the two and produces the first triad, the heart or the understanding. The fourth and fifth Sephiroth, i.e., love and justice are the two arms, the former the right arm and the latter the left. One distributing life and the other death. The sixth Sephira, beauty, uniting these two opposites and producing the second triad, is the chest. Firmness and splendor of the third triad represent the two legs, whereas foundation, the ninth Sephira, represents the genital organs, since it denotes the basis and source of all things. Finally kingdom, the 10th Sephira, represents the harmony of the whole archetypal man. Now in looking at the Sephiroth which constitute the first triad, it will be seen that they represent the intellect. Hence this triad is called by Azariel the intellectual world, Olam Muskal or Olam Hasechel. The second triad which represents moral qualities, is called the moral or sensuous world, Olam Murgash, also Olam Hanefesh. And the third, representing power and stability, is called the material world, Olam Mutba or Olam Hadaba. As concerns the Kabbalistic tree, the Elon HaKabbalah, the Sephiroth are so arranged that the first triad is placed above, the second and third are placed below, in such a manner that the three masculine Sephiroth are on the right. The three feminine on the left, whilst the four uniting Sephiroth occupy the center. According to another arrangement the Sephiroth are so ordered that they form three pillars, a right one, Sitra Dimina, also a Muda di Chesed, i.e., the pillar of mercy, a left one, Sitra Dismala, also a Muda di Dina, i.e., the pillar of judgment, and a middle one, a Muda de Mzaida. In the right pillar to which belong the Sephiroth wisdom, love and firmness, is life, in the left with the Sephiroth intelligence, judgment, splendor, is death. The middle pillar comprises crown, beauty, foundation. The basis of all three pillars is the kingdom. So far as the Sephiroth represent the first manifestation of God, they form a world for themselves, an ideal world which has nothing to do with the real, material world. As such it is now called the primordial, the archetypal man, Adam Kadmon, now the heavenly man, Adam Eli. As for the Adam Kadmon, different views exist in the Kabbalistic writings. He is sometimes taken as the totality of the Sephiroth, and he appears as a pre-Sephirotic first emanation superior to them, by which God manifested himself as creator and ruler of the world. As it were a prototype, macrocosm, of the entire creation. In this case it would seem as if the Adam Kadmon were a first manifestation, inserted between God and the world, so to say a second God 49 or the divine word. 50. According to a later theorem, 4 worlds proceed by an emanation in different gradations. This is expressed by Ibn Latif thus: as the point extends and thickens into a line, the line into the plane into the expanded body, thus God's self-manifestation unfolds itself in the different worlds. In each of these 4 worlds the 10 Sephiroth recur. The first Sephira gave birth to the Olam Azala or world of emanation, containing the powers of the divine plan of the world. Its beings have the same nature as that belonging to the world of the Sephiroth or to the Adam Kadmon. This world, which is also called the Olam HaSephiroth, i.e., the world of the Sephiroth, is the seat of the Shekhinah. From the Olam Azala proceeded the Olam Beria or world of creation, in which according to Rabbi Isaac Nasir 51 are the souls of the saints, all the blessings, the throne of the deity, and the palaces of all spiritual and moral perfection. The Olam Beria gave birth to the Olam Jazira or world of formation, in which dwell the holy angels, whose prince is Metatron. 52. But there are also the demons, which on account of their grossly sensual nature are called Keliphoth, shells, and inhabit the planets and other heavenly bodies or the realm of the ether. The 4th world is called Olam Asiya, the world of action. Its substances consist of matter limited by space and perceptible to the senses in a multiplicity of forms. It is subject to constant changes, generations, arid corruptions, and is the abode of the evil spirit. Like the Talmud and the Midrash, the Zohar represents the optimistic view, that the present world is the best. Thus we read, Zohar 3:292b, there were old worlds, which perished as soon as they came into existence. They were formless, and were called sparks. Thus the smith when hammering the iron, lets the sparks fly in all directions. These sparks are the primordial worlds, which could not continue, because the sacred aged had not as yet assumed his form, of opposite sexes the king and queen, and the master was not yet at his work. And again we read, 3:61b, the Holy One, blessed be he, created and destroyed several worlds before the present one was made, and when this last work was nigh completed, all the things of this world, all the creatures of the universe. In whatever age they were to exist, before they entered into this world, were present before God in their true form. Thus are the words of Ecclesiastes to be understood. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. Since the Kabbalists viewed all things from the anthropological point of view, they also transformed to the world of the Sephiroth the difference of sex. The male principle, called Abba, is white and of an active nature, appearing especially in the Sephira love, but also at the bottom of the 3 Sephiroth on the right side. The female principle, on the other hand, which owes its origin to the male principle, is red and of a receptive nature. It is mainly visible in the Sephira Justice, but is also at the bottom of the 3 Sephiroth on the left. The sign of the male principle is the Y, that of the female the H, in the divine name YHVH. What we learn is this: the Sephiroth teach that everything which exists is imperishable and like God. As nothing perishes in the world or is fully annihilated, thus the stamp and seal of divinity is stamped on all beings. God as the invisible and endless, En Sof, became visible and intelligible by the Sephiroth. The human mind can come to him, can know and conceive him. The realm of evil, besides the heavenly realm of the Sephiroth of light or of the good, there is also a realm of the Sephiroth of darkness or of evil. Over against the supreme emanation of light, the atom Cadmon, stands as opponent the atom Belial. The same is the case with every light Sapphira, it is opposed by a Sapphira of darkness. Thus both are related to one another as the right side to the left, the light Sephiroth form the right side, the darkness Sephiroth the left side, Sitra Achra. The realm of darkness is figuratively called also the kingdom of Cain, Esau and Pharaoh, Zohar, I, 55a. Like the kingdom of light, that of darkness has 10 degrees. As the kingdom of light is inhabited by good spirits, so the kingdom of darkness is inhabited by evil spirits, demons, shells. Their prince is called Samuel, angel of poison or of death, his wife is called the harlot or the woman of whoredom. Both are thought of as having intercourse with each other, just as in the realm of light God as king has intercourse with Malcheth as queen. Through the influence of the evil powers the creation is continually disturbed. Men are seduced to apostasy from God, and thus the kingdom of the evil grows and the Keliphoth or shells increase. In the figurative language of the Zohar, this disturbance of the creation is described as if the king and queen kept aloof from each other and could not work together for the welfare of the world. But this discord is finally harmonized by repentance, self-mortification, prayer and strict observance of the prescribed ceremonies, and the original harmony of things is again restored. It must be observed, however, that the teaching about the opposition of the two kingdoms belongs to the later doctrines of the Cabala, and its development belongs to the 13th century. Closely connected with the doctrine about evil is that of the Messiah. His coming takes place when the kingdom of the Keliphoth is overcome through the pious and virtuous life of men here on earth. Then also takes place the restoration of the original state of affairs, Tikkun. Since under his rule everything turns to the divine light, all idolatry ceases, because the Keliphoth no longer seduce men to apostasy. Cabala as mistress, rules then over the slave philosophy. In the upper world, too, great changes take place at the coming of the Messiah. The king again has intercourse with the queen. Through their copulation the divinity regains the destroyed unity. But one she says that Kabbalistic literature, especially the Zohar, often describes this union of the king and the queen in terms bordering on shamelessness and shocking to decency and morals. The whole universe, however, was not complete, and did not receive its finishing stroke till man was formed, who is the acme of creation, and the microcosm uniting in himself the totality of beings. 53 The lower man is a type of the heavenly Adam Cadmon. 54 Man consists of body and soul. Though the body is only the raiment or the covering of the soul, yet it represents the Merkaba, the heavenly throne chariot. All members have their symbolic meaning. Greater than the body is the soul, because it emanates from the Ein Sof and has the power to influence the intelligible world by means of channels, Zinneroth, and to bring blessings upon the nether world. The soul is called Nefesh, life, Ruach, soul, and Neshama, spirit. As Neshama, which is the highest degree of being, it has the power to come into connection with God and the realm of light, as Ruach it is the seat of good and evil. As Nefesh it is immediately connected with the body and is the direct cause of its lower functions, instincts, and animal life. Psychology, like Plato, Origen, etc., the Kabbalah teaches a pre-existence of the soul. 55 All souls destined to enter into human bodies existed from the beginning. Clad in a spiritual garb they dwell in their heavenly abode and enjoy the view of the divine splendor of the Shekinah. With great reluctance the soul enters into the body, for as Zohar, 2:96b, tells us, the soul, before assuming a human body, addresses God, Lord of the universe. Happy am I in this world, and do not wish to go into another where I shall be a bondmaid, and be exposed to all kinds of pollutions. Here, too, we notice again the influence of Platonic and Philonian doctrines. In its original state each soul is androgynous, and is separated into male and female when it descends on earth to be born in a human body. At the time of marriage both parts are united again as they were before, and again constitute one soul, Zohar, I, 91b. This doctrine reminds us of Plato and Philo no less than that other, viz. of Numenueta Sigma Iota, that the soul carries her knowledge with her to the earth, so that, everything which she learns here below she knew already, before she entered into this world. Zohar 3:61b. Of great interest is the metempsychosis of the Cabala. How this doctrine, already espoused by the Egyptians, Pythagoreans and Plato, came into Jewish mysticism, is not yet fully explained. 56 But it is interesting to learn of the destiny of man and the universe according to the Kabbalists. It is an absolute condition of the soul to return to the infinite source from which it emanated, after developing on earth the perfections, the germs of which are implanted in it. If the soul, after assuming a human body, fails during its first sojourn on earth to acquire that experience for which it descends from heaven, and becomes contaminated by sin, it must re-inhabit a body again and again, till it is able to ascend in a purified state. This transmigration or Gilgul, however, is restricted to 3 times. And if 2 souls in their third residence in human bodies are still too weak to resist all earthly trammels and to acquire the necessary experience, they are both united and sent into one body, so that they may be able conjointly to learn that which they were too feeble to do separately. It sometimes happens, however, that it is the singleness and isolation of the soul which is the source of the weakness, and it requires help to pass through its probation. In that case it chooses for a companion a soul which has more strength and better fortune. The stronger of the two then becomes as it were the mother. She carries the sickly one in her bosom, and nurses her from her own substance, just as a woman nurses her child. Such an association is therefore called pregnancy, Ibr, because the stronger soul gives as it were life and substance to the weaker companion. This doctrine of the superfoetatio was especially taught by Isaac Luria or Luria. It is obvious that this doctrine of the Ibr naturally led to wild superstition and fraudulent thaumaturgy. Luria himself claimed to have the soul of the Messiah ben Joseph. Connected with Luria's system is the doctrine of the Kawana, by which is meant the absorbed state of the soul in its direction towards God when performing the ceremonies, in prayer, self-mortification, in the pronunciation of the divine name and reading of the Zohar, whereby the bounds are broken and the fullness of blessing from the upper world is brought down upon the lower. The world, being an expansion of the deity's own substance, must also share ultimately that blessedness which it enjoyed in its first evolution. Even Satan himself, the archangel of wickedness, will be restored to his angelic nature, since he, too, proceeded from the infinite source of all things. When the last human soul has passed through probation, then the Messiah will appear and the great Jubilee year will commence, when the whole pleroma of souls, Otzer Haneshemoth, cleansed and purified shall return to the bosom of the infinite source and rest in the palace of love. Zohar 2:97a. Mystic interpretation. The exegetically ingenuity of the Cabala is interesting to the theologian. The principle of the mystic interpretation is universal and not peculiar to one or another school, as everyone will perceive in ecclesiastical history, and even in the history of Greek literature. We find it in Philo, in the New Testament, in the writings of the Fathers, in the Talmud, and in the Zohar. And the more such an interpretation departed from the spirit of the sacred text, the more necessary was it to bring the scriptures to its support by distortions of their meanings. 57. Passing over all manner of subtleties of the pre-Zoharic times, we will consider the masterly performances of the Kabbalists. According to them the letters, words and names of the scriptures contain divine mysteries of wondrous, mystical thoughts and ideas, of significant symbols and riddles, on which depends the continuance of the world. Zohar 2:99a. Is it conceivable, the Zohar makes one of Simon ben Jokai's circle exclaim, that God had no holier matters to communicate than these common things about Esau and Hagar, Laban and Jacob, Balaam's ass, Balak's jealousy of Israel, and Zimri's lewdness? Does a collection of such tales, taken in their ordinary sense, deserve the name of Torah? And can it be said of such a revelation that it utters the pure truth? If that is all the Torah contains, we can produce in our time a book as good as this, perhaps better. No, no. The higher, mystical sense of the Torah is its true sense. The biblical narratives resemble a beautiful dress which enraptures fools so that they do not look beneath it. This robe, however, covers a body, i.e., the precepts of the law, and this again a soul, the higher soul. Woe to the guilty, who assert that the Torah contains only simple stories, and therefore look only upon the dress. Blessed are the righteous, who seek the real sense of the law. The jar is not the wine, so stories do not make up the Torah, Ibid. 3, 152a. Thus the Kabbalists attached little importance to the literal sense, yet not a single iota was to be taken from it and nothing was to be added to it, Ibid. 2, 99. In order to elicit the mysteries from the scriptures, the Kabbalists employed certain hermeneutical canons, 58 viz. 1. Gematria, 59 i.e., the art of discovering the hidden sense of the text by means of the numerical equivalence of the letters. Thus from the Hebrew words, V'nei Shalosha, translated, lo. 3, men stood by him, in Gen. 18, 2, it is deduced that these three were the angels Michael, Gabriel and Raphael, because the letters yield the numerical value of 701, viz. Equals 6 plus equals 5 plus equals 50 plus equals 5 plus equals 300 plus equals 30 plus equals 300 plus equals 5 is equal to 701. And the same number yields the words, viz. Equals 1 plus equals 30 plus equals 6 plus equals 40 plus equals 10 plus equals 20 plus equals 1 plus equals 30 plus equals 3 plus equals 2 plus equals 200 plus equals 10 plus equals 1 plus equals 30 plus equals 6 plus equals 200 plus equals 80 plus equals 1 plus equals 30 equals 701. A like figuring we find in the Epistle of Barnabas, ch. 9, with reference to the 318 servants of Abraham, mentioned in Gen 14. 14. The author lays stress upon the fact that in the Hebrew the 18 are mentioned first, and that the 300 afterwards. In the 18 expressed by the Greek letters iota equals 10 and eta equals 8 he sees Jesus, iota eta sigma omicron upsilon sigma, and in the 300 he sees by the letter tau equals 300, the cross. With this canon may be compared the number oracle, by means of which one can tell from the number of the letters of the name and the dates of the birth important years and days in the life of a man. Thus, for instance, Emperor William I, was born March 22, 1797, 3 plus 22 plus 1797 plus 7, number of the letters of the name equals 1829, the year of marriage, 1829 plus 1 plus 8 plus 2 plus 9 is equal to 1849, campaign to Baden. 1849 plus 1 plus 8 plus 4 plus 9 is equal to 1871, coronation as emperor. 1871 plus 1 plus 8 plus 7 plus 1 is equal to 1888, year of death. Napoleon III, born 4/20, 1808, 4 plus 20 plus 1808 plus 8, number of the letters of the name, equals 1840, the coup at Boulogne, 1840 plus 1 plus 8 plus 4 plus 0 is equal to 1853, first year as emperor, 1853 plus 1 plus 8 plus 5 plus 3 is equal to 1870. End of his rule. 60. 2. Notaricon, from the Latin notarius, a shorthand writer, one who among the Romans belonged to that class of writers who abbreviated and used single letters to signify whole words. Is employed when every letter of a word is taken as an initial or abbreviation of a word. Thus, for instance, every letter of the Hebrew first word in Genesis 61 is made the initial of a word, and from, in the beginning, we obtain, in the beginning God saw that Israel should accept the law. Or the word Adam, ADM, is made Adam, David, Messiah. Sometimes very curious and ingenious combinations are derived from this system. For instance the word passim 62 used in the passage, and he made a coat of, passim, many colors, Gen 37. 3, is made to indicate the misfortunes which Joseph experienced in being sold by his brethren to Potiphar, merchants, Ishmaelites, Midianites. 63. It appears that the Christian fathers sometimes made use of the same rule. As for instance Christ has been called by them iota chi theta upsilon sigma, fish, because these letters are the initials of the Greek words, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Savior. 64. Thus St. Augustine tells us, de Civ. Dei, 18, 23, that when they were speaking about Christ, Flacianus, a very famous man, of most ready eloquence, and much learning, produced a Greek manuscript, saying that it was the prophecies of the Erythraean Sibyl. In this he pointed out a certain passage that had the initial letters of the lines so arranged that those words could be read in them. Then he went on and gave these verses, of which the initial letters yield that meaning, and says, "But if you join the initial letters of these 5 Greek words, they will make the word ichthys, 65, that is, fish." In which word Christ is mystically understood, because he was able to live, that is, to exist, without sin in the abyss of this mortality as in the depth of waters. It is worthy of notice that Augustine only gives 27 lines 66 of the 34, as contained in the Oracula Sibyllina, 8, 217 ff, where the acrostic reads, Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior, Cross. 67 in its full form. It is also given by Eusebius in the life of the blessed Emperor Constantine. For the benefit of the reader we subjoin Neale's translation of the acrostic as given in the Christian Remembrancer, October, 1861, p. 287. Judgment at hand, the earth shall sweat with fear. Eternal King, the Judge shall come on high. Shall doom all flesh, shall bid the world appear. Unveiled before his throne. Him every eye shall, just or unjust, see in majesty. Consummate time shall view the saints assemble. His own assessors, and the souls of men. Round the great judgment seat shall wait and tremble. In fear of sentence, and the green earth then shall turn to desert. They that see that day to moles and bats their gods shall cast away. Sea, earth, and heaven, and hell's dread gates shall burn. Obedient to their call, the dead return. Nor shall the judge unfitting doom discern. Of chains and darkness to each wicked soul. For them that have been good, the starry pole. Gnashing of teeth, and woe, and fierce despair. Of such as hear the righteous judge declare. Deeds long forgot, which that last day shall bear. Then when each darkened breast he brings to sight. Heaven's stars shall fall, and day be changed to night. Effaced the sun ray, and the moon's pale light. Surely the valleys he on high shall raise. All hills shall cease, all mountains turn to plain. Vessels shall no more pass the watery ways. In the dread lightning parching earth shall blaze. Ogygian rivers seek to flow in vain. Unutterable woe the trumpet blast. Re-echoing through the ether, shall forecast. Then Tartarus shall wrap the world in gloom. High chiefs and princes shall receive their doom. Eternal fire and brimstone for their tomb. Crown of the world, sweet wood, salvation's horn. Rearing its beauty, shall for man be born. O wood, that saints adore, and sinners scorn. So from 12 fountains shall its light be poured. Staff of the shepherd, and victorious sword. We may also state that words of those verses which are regarded as containing a peculiar recondite meaning are ranged in squares in such a manner as to be read either vertically or boustrophedonally beginning at the right or left hand. Again the words of several verses are placed over each other, and the letters which stand under each other are formed into new words. This is especially seen in the treatment of 3 verses in Exodus 14. 19-21, each containing 72 letters, which are believed to contain the 3 pillars of the Sephiroth and the divine name of 72 words. Now, if these 3 verses be written out one above the other, the first from right to left, the second from left to right, and the third from right to left, they will give 72 columns of 3 letters each. Then each column will be a word of 3 letters, and as there are 72 columns, there will be 72 words of 3 letters, each of which will be the 72 names of the deity. By writing the verses all from right to left, instead of boustrophedonally, there will be other sets of 72 names obtainable. The reader who is interested in these niceties will find ample information in Bartolacci, Bibliotheca Magna Rabbinica, for pages 230 ff. 3. Timura or permutation. According to certain rules, one letter is substituted for another letter preceding or following it in the alphabet, and thus from one word another word of totally different orthography may be formed. Thus the alphabet is bent exactly in the middle, and one half is put over the other, and then by changing alternately the first letter or the first two letters at the beginning of the second line, 22 permutations are produced. These are called the table of the combinations of Tsiraf. For example's sake we give the method called albath. Thus, A B G D H V Z C H T Y K L T H S H R Q T Z P I S N M. The method abgath is thus exemplified. A G D H V Z C H T Y K L B T H S H R Q T Z P I S N M. The names of the 22 permutations are albath, abgath, agdath, adbag, abad, avba, asbav. Akbaz, atbak, abat, achbai, albak, ambal, anbam, aspen, abaz, afba, asbaf, akbaz, arbak, ashbar, athbash. To these must be added as, 23, abgad, 24, album. I will only remark that by the system called athbash, it is found at the word sheshak in J 25. 26 is the same as Babel, and that Jerome is said to have confidently applied this system. 68. Besides these canons, the Cabala also sees a recondite sense in the form of the letters, as well as in the ornaments which adorn them. The more multifarious these trifles, the easier it is to arrive in every given case at a result, and the less wit or thought is required. Although the canons mentioned above are already applied in the Talmud and Midrash, the Kabbalists made a more copious use of them. The names of God became a special object of their fancy. With them they imagined they could accomplish everything and perform miracles, heal the sick, extinguish the fire, etc. The most miraculous effects were ascribed to the Tetragrammaton. Whoever was in possession of the true pronunciation of that name could enter in relation with the upper world and receive revelations. Each letter of the sacred name was considered as something mysterious. The letter Y, of YHVH, referred to the Father as Creator, Abba, and H to the Mother, Imma. Because the letter H occurred twice, they distinguished an upper and a lower mother. The permutation of the letters of the Tetragrammaton brought about a multitude of new divine names which, either spoken or written, influenced the course and laws of nature. As was the case with the name of God consisting of 4 letters, so it was with that consisting of 12, 22, 42 and 72 letters. All were believed to contain great mysteries. 69. The names of angels were treated in like manner. Thus the Kabbalists greatly misused the Old Testament, especially the Torah. And, as says Professor Wunshi, by making the Bible a textbook to elicit deeper ideas, the greatest nonsense and rubbish came to light. The so-called hidden mysteries and revelations were nothing but fancies whirling in the heads of the Kabbalists. The exegetically literature of the Cabala clearly proves that its representatives had completely lost the sense for a suitable understanding of the words of Scripture. 70. 6. The Cabala in relation to Judaism and Christianity. It must be acknowledged that the Cabala intended to oppose philosophy and to intensify religion. But by introducing heathenish ideas it grafted on Judaism a conception of the world which was foreign to it and produced the most pernicious results. In place of the monotheistic biblical idea of God, according to which God is the creator, preserver and ruler of the world, the confused, pantheistically colored heathenish doctrine of emanation was substituted. The belief in the unity of God was replaced by the decade of the 10 Sephiroth which were considered as divine substances. By no longer addressing prayers directly to God, but to the Sephiroth, a real Sephiroth cult originated. The legal discussions of the Talmud were of no account. The Kabbalists despised the Talmud, they considered it as a canker of Judaism, which must be cut out if Judaism were to recover. According to the Zohar, I, 27b, 3, 275a. 279b, the Talmud is only a bondmaid, but the Cabala a controlling mistress. The Kabbalists compared the Talmud to a hard, unfruitful rock, which when smitten yields only scanty drops that in the end become a cause of controversy. Whereas the study of the Cabala is like a fresh gushing spring, which one needs only to address to cause it to pour out its refreshing contents. 71. And as the Kabbalists treated the Talmud, they likewise treated philosophy, which defined religious ideas and vindicated religious precepts before the forum of reason. Most Kabbalists opposed philosophy. She was the Hagar that must be driven from the house of Abraham, whereas the Cabala was the Sarah, the real mistress. At the time of the Messiah the mistress will rule over the bondmaid. But the study of the Bible was also neglected. Scripture was no longer studied for its own sake, but for the sake of finding the so-called higher sense by means of mystical hermeneutical rules. Even the rituals were variously changed and recast. The putting on of the phylacteries and permantle, talith, was accompanied by the recitation of Kabbalistic formulas and sentences. Special prayers were also addressed to the Sephiroth. Connected with all this was an extravagant, intoxicating superstition. To enable the soul to connect itself with the realm of light and its spirits, or to be transplanted after death into its heavenly abode, one underwent all manner of austere ascetical exercises. With the mysterious name of God they believed themselves enabled to heal the sick, to deliver demoniacs and to extinguish conflagrations. By application of the right formulas of prayer, man was to have power and influence on both the kingdoms of light and darkness. When the Kabbalist prays, God shakes his head, changes at once his decrees, and abolishes heavy judgments. The magical names of God can even deliver the condemned and free them from their torments in their place of punishment. In this respect we even meet with the doctrine of the Catholic Mass for the souls. 72. The Book of Psalms with its songs and prayers was especially considered as a means of producing all manner of miracles and magic, as may be seen from the Sefer Shemesh Tehillim, literally. The Book of the Kabbalistic Application of the Psalms, a fragment of the Practical Cabala, translated by Gottfried Selig, Berlin, 1788. This sketch of Professor Wunschy is by no means exaggerated. 73. Mutatis mutandis we find the Kabbalistic notions among the Hasidim, a sect founded in 1740 by a certain Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer Baal Shem, 74, also called Besht. Baal Shem made his public appearance about 1740 in Tlusty, in the district of Zartkau, from whence he subsequently removed to Medzabos, in Podolia. The miraculous cures and prophecies attracted attention in large circles. His mode of life, consisting of contemplation, study of the Zohar and frequent washings in rivers, soon spread a halo around him. Added to this were the many miraculous reports circulated by his disciples. For instance, that his father had been visited by the prophet Elijah to predict his birth, and that his mother was 100 years old when she was delivered of him, that, when a youth, he had victoriously struggled with evil spirits, etc. All of which may be found in the book Shibsh HaBesht, published in 1815 by the grandson of Baal Shem, Rabbi Bar Linz. Baal Shem 75 and his successors received the name Tzaddik, saint, and his fame attracted multitudes of Jews from all parts of Poland, who submitted themselves to his guidance. As long as he lived, the sect formed one great whole, of which he was the head. After his death, which took place in 1780, it was divided into separate congregations, each of which had its own rabbi or tzaddik or saint, unreserved devotion to whom is the most important of all the principles of the sect. In a word, before Pius IX was declared infallible, the Hasidim 76 already had their infallible popes, whose number is still very large in Poland, Wallachia, Moldavia, Galicia, and Palestine. Of these popes of the Hasidim, a modern Jewish writer, the late David Cassel, died 1893, says, to the disgrace of Judaism and modern culture that tzaddikim still go on with their disgraceful business, and are thus the most essential hindrances to the dissemination of literary progress in Galicia and Russia. There are still thousands who behold in the tzaddik the worker of miracles, the prophet, one who is in close communion with God and angels, and who present him with rich gifts and promulgate the wonders which they have seen. Covetousness on the one hand and spiritual narrowness on the other are the channels through which the evil is fed anew. Christianity. As soon as the Cabala became better known, Christians betook themselves to its study and paid it the greatest attention because of the supposed agreement of its teachings with the dogmas of the Christian Church. It was thought that the Cabala was the connecting link between Judaism and Christianity. The dogmas of the Trinity, of the Messiah as the Son of God and his atonement, were the salient points which especially attracted attention. The first to be drawn to the Cabala was Raymond Lully, the Doctor Illuminatus, 1236–1315. He regarded the Cabala as a divine science and as a genuine revelation whose light is revealed to a rational soul. The progress of Christianity towards the Cabala was greatly helped by the conversion of a large number of Jews to Christianity, in which they recognized a closer relation to their Gnostic views. And also by the Christians perceiving that Gnosticism could become a powerful instrument for the conversion of the Jews. Among the converted Jews we notice Paulus de Heredia of Aragon, about 1480, author of Igrit Hasadat or Epistola Secretorum, treating of the divinity, death, and resurrection of the Messiah, which has been ascribed to a certain Echunja ben Hakana, who lived towards the end of the Second Temple. Another convert was Paul Ricci, 77 of the 16th century, the friend of Erasmus, and physician to the Emperor Maximilian I. Julius Conrad Otto, author of the Unveiled Secrets, consisting of extracts from the Talmud and the Zohar, to prove the validity of the Christian doctrine, Nuremberg, 1805. John Stephen Rittengel, grandson of the celebrated Isaac Abravanel, the translator of the book Jezira into Latin, Amsterdam, 1642. Among Christians we may mention Count John Pico di Mirandola, born in 1463, author of LXXII Conclusions Cabalistica, Rome, 1486, more especially John Reuchlin, Capnio, 1455–1522. Reuchlin, the first German scholar who studied the Cabala, wrote two Kabbalistic treatises, entitled De Verbo Mirifico, Basel, 1494, and De Arte Kabbalistica, Haguenau, 1516. 78. The first treatise is written in the form of a dialogue between an Epicurean philosopher named Sidonius, a Jew named Baruch, and the author, who is introduced by the Greek name Capnio. Capnio would have it that the doctrine of the Trinity is to be found in the first verse of Genesis. He submits, if the Hebrew word bara, which is translated, created, be examined, and if each of the three letters composing this word be taken as the initial of a separate word, we obtain the expression ben, ruach, hub, i.e. Son, Spirit, Father. Upon the same principle we find the two persons of the Trinity in the word abn, eben, stone, occurring in Ps. Xvi. 22. The stone which the builders rejected is become the head of the corner, by dividing the three letters composing the word abn into a ben, i.e., Father, Son. The second treatise is also in the form of a dialogue between a Mohammedan, a Pythagorean philosopher and a Jew. The dialogue is held at Frankfurt where the Jew lives to whom the others come to be initiated into the mysteries of the Cabala. The whole is a more matured exposition and elaboration of the ideas hinted at in the first treatise. How the truths of Christianity can be derived from the Talmud and the Cabala. The Franciscan Pietro Galatino endeavored to prove in his treatise De Arcanis Catholici Veritatis contra obstinatissimum judicorum nostrae tempestatis perfidium, Ortona di Mare, 1518. Much as Lully, Mirandola, Reuchlin, and others had already done to acquaint the Christian world with the secrets of the Cabala, none of these scholars had given translations of any portions of the Zohar. To this task nor Baron von Rosenroth betook himself by publishing the celebrated work Cabala Denudata, the Cabala Unveiled, in 2 large volumes, the first of which was printed in Sulzbach, 1677–78, the second at Frankfurt on the Main, 1864. Giving a Latin translation of the introduction to and the following portion of the Zohar, the Book of Mysteries. The Great Assembly, the Small Assembly, 79 Joseph Chikatila's Gate of Light, Shar Ora, Vital's Doctrine of Metempsychosis, Pagilgilim, and the Tree of Life, Etz Chayim, Cordevero's Garden of Pomegranates, Pards Rimmonim. Abraham Hura's Gate of Heaven, Sha'ar HaShemayim, Naphtali ben Jacob's Valley of the King, Emek HaBacha, Naphtali Cohen's Vision of the Priest, Meir Cohen, etc., etc., with elaborate annotations, glossaries and indices. Nor von Rosenroth has also collected all the passages of the New Testament which contain similar doctrines to those propounded by the Cabala. In spite of its many drawbacks, the work has been made use of by later scholars, especially by Chr. Schottgen in his Ori Hebraicae et Talmudicae, Dresden, 1733, and Theologia Judicorum de Messia, Ibid, 1742. The powerful preponderance of the religious and ecclesiastical interests, as well as those of practical politics which became perceptible in the first quarter of the 16th century, giving to the mind a positive impulse, and to the studies a substantial foundation, arrested the further development of the Cabala. And thus it came about that in the course of time the zeal for Kabbalistic studies among Christians has cooled. It has become generally understood that the Cabala and Christianity are two different things. The idea of God according to the writings of the Old and New Testaments is entirely different. The same is the case with the notion of creation. When the first triad of the Sephiroth, crown, wisdom and intelligence, is referred to the three persons of the deity, their inner immanent relation is not thereby fully expressed, as Christianity teaches it. The three Sephiroth only represent three potencies of God or three forms of his emanation. The other Sephiroth are also such divine powers and forms. One can therefore rightly say that the Cabala teaches not the Trinity, but the tenunity of God. Also the other characteristics, when e.g. the Zohar ascribes to God three heads, or when it speaks of a God Father, Abba, of a God Mother, Imma, and of a God Son, or when we are told, Zohar, 3, 262a, comp. 67a, that there are two, and one is connected with them, and they are three, but in being three, they are one. This does not coincide in the least with the Christian doctrine of the Trinity. 81. In one codex of the Zohar we read on the words, Holy, Holy, Holy is the Lord of hosts, is 6. 3. The first Holy refers to the Holy Father, the second to the Holy Son, and the third to the Holy Ghost. But this passage is now omitted from the present recensions of the Zohar, and has been regarded by some Jewish writers as an interpolation. 82. As to the doctrine of Christ, the God incarnate, it cannot be paralleled with the confused doctrine of Adam Kadmon, the primordial man. According to the Christian notion, the reconciliation is effected only through Christ, the Son of God. According to the Cabala, man can redeem himself by means of a strict observance of the law, by asceticism and other means whereby he influences God and the world of light in a mystical manner. For the benefit of the reader we give the following passages which speak of the atonement of the Messiah for the sins of people, passages which are given as the explanation of the 53rd chapter of Isaiah. When the righteous are visited with sufferings and afflictions to atone for the sins of the world, is that they might atone for all the sins of this generation. How is this proved? By all the members of the body. When all members suffer, one member is afflicted in order that all may recover. And which of them? The arm. The arm is beaten, the blood is taken from it, and then the recovery of all the members of the body is secured. So it is with the children of the world, they are members of one another. When the Holy One, blessed be He, wishes the recovery of the world, He afflicts one righteous from their midst, and for his sake all are healed. How is this shown? It is written, He was wounded for our transgressions, He was bruised for our iniquities, and with His stripes we are healed, is 3. 5, Zohar, 3, 2:18a. To the same effect is the following passage, those souls which tarry in the nether garden of Eden hover about the world, and when they see suffering or patient martyrs and those who suffer for the unity of God, they return and mention it to the Messiah. When they tell the Messiah of the afflictions of Israel in exile, and that the sinners among them do not reflect in order to know their Lord, He raises His voice and weeps because of those sinners, as it is written. He is wounded for our transgressions, is 53, 5. Whereupon those souls return and take their place. In the Garden of Eden there is one place which is called the Palace of the Sick. The Messiah goes into this palace and invokes all the sufferings, pain and afflictions of Israel to come upon Him, and they all come upon Him. Now if He did not remove them thus and take them upon Himself, no man could endure the sufferings of Israel, due as punishment for transgressing the law, as it is written, surely He hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, etc., is 53, 4 with Rom 12. 3, 4. When the children of Israel were in the Holy Land, they removed all those sufferings and afflictions from the world by their prayers and sacrifices, but now the Messiah removes them from the world. Zohar, 2, 2:12b. With reference to these passages 83 which speak of the atonement of the Messiah for the sins of the people, which are given in the Zohar as the explanation of the 53rd chapter of Isaiah. Professor Dalman 84 remarks that the Jews reject and object to Kabbalistic statements as something foreign to genuine Judaism. The theosophic speculations of the Cabala are at least just as Jewish as the religious philosophical statements of Bacha or Maimonides. Yes, it seems to us that the God of revelation and of Scripture is more honestly retained in the former than in the latter, where he becomes a mathematical one without attribute and thereby may satisfy a superficial reason, but leaves the heart empty. That these Jewish thinkers, influenced by Aristotle, had no inclination to find in his 53 an expiating mediator, is only too inexplicable. He, who by his own strength can soar into the sphere of intelligences, and thus bring his soul to immortality, needs no mediator. But we are concerned here not with a philosophical or theosophical thought complex, but the simple question whether the prophet speaks in his 53 of a suffering mediator of salvation. The answer of the Kabbalists at any rate agrees with the testimony of many of them. What are we to think of the Cabala? That there is a relationship between it and Neoplatonism is obvious. Eric Bischoff 85 thinks that the Cabala represents a peculiar monism, which in some degree has influenced modern philosophy. In ethical respects it contains many fruitful and sublime thoughts, often indeed in fanciful wording. But as magic it has been of great influence on all kinds of superstitions and even on occultistic tendencies. It offers a highly interesting object of study whose closer investigation is rendered more difficult on account of the abstruse manner of representation and the many magic and mystic accessories. But that which is valuable is sufficient to ensure for it a lasting interest. Bibliography. The following references are given for the sake of those who may be sufficiently interested in the subject to enter further into its details. Wolf, Bibliotheca Hebrea, Volume 2, pages 119-11247, Hamburg, 1728. First, Bibliotheca Judaica, Volume 3, pages 320325, Leipzig, 1863. Brucker, Katzifragen aus der Philosophischen History, Volume 4, Ulm, 1733. Klieker, Über die Natur und den Ursprung der Emanationslehre bei den Kabbalisten, Riga, 1786. Bier, Geschichte und Meinungen aller Bestandenen und Nachbestehenden Sekten der Juden und der Geheimlehre oder Kabbalah, 2 volumes, Brunn, 1823. Molitor, Philosophie der Geschichte oder über die Tradition, 4 volumes, Munster, 1827-1853, 2d. ed. 1857. Freistadt, Philosophia Kabbalistica, ex fontibus primarius adumbravit ac inter se comparavit, Königsberg, 1832, Kabbalismus und Pantheismus, Ibid 1832. Tholuck, De Orte Kabbali, Hamburg, 1837. Hamburger, Die hohe Bedeutung der altjüdischen Tradition oder der sogenannten Kabbalah, Sulzbach, 1844, a review of Molitor's work. Lutterbeck, Die Neutestamentlichen Lehrbegriffe, Volume 1, 1853. Mrs. Zaphnath Panich, Darstellung und Krich Beleuchtung der jüdischen Geheimlehre, 2 parts. Krakow, 1862-63. Lichtenberger, Encyclopédie des Sciences Religieuses, Art. Cabale, Volume 2, pages 497 ff., Paris, 1878. Bloch, Geschichte der Entwicklung der Kabbalah, Trier, 1894. Ehrenpreis, Kabbalistische Studien, Part 1, Frankfurt on the Main, 1895. Vacant, Dictionnaire de Théologie Catholique, Paris, 1899, ff., Art. Cabale, Volume 2, 1271-91. Wunschy, Art. Cabala, in Herzog Hoch Real Enzyklopädie für Protestantische Theologie und Kirche, Volume 9, Leipzig, 1901. Bischof, die Cabala. Einführung in die jüdische Mystik und Geheimwissenschaft, Leipzig, 1903, treats the subject in a catechetical manner. Schlein, Art. Cabala, in Kirchliches Handlexikon, München, 1907, ff Volume 2, 255-257. We have purposely refrained from referring to the historical handbooks of D. Kassel, S. Bach, G. Carpeles, etc., because they offer nothing new from a critical point of view. And for obvious reasons we make no mention of articles on the Cabala in English cyclopedias. The end.